Right. We will call the June 13th, 2022 City Council Committee of the Whole to order. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Brereton. Brereton is absent. Fleury.
Here.
Frank.
Here.
Freeman. Here. McGee.
Here.
Mulhall. Mulhall's absent. Porter.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
8 present.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 registered for public comment. Both of these items are on the agenda under Other, A and B, one regarding street legal UTVs and golf carts, Mr. Ryan Kilber, and item B, flooding concerns along Oak Street, Mike Myrtle. Both have registered. So I think it would probably be just as wise to go ahead and move along, and then when we get to those items, we'll recognize both of you, and that way if there's any questions, they can be asked. We have no public forum, reports of officers, boards, and special committees. Item 1, under Other, we have Ryan Kilber here regarding street legal UTVs and golf carts, and Ryan and I had a phone call, and I know he had sent me some information. He had also provided a packet of information, I think, on all the aldermen's desk here this evening. So unless there are any objections, Ryan, would you mind coming up here, stating your name for the record?
I'm Ryan Kilber, resident here of Belvedere. Like the mayor said, I did leave a packet with all the information that I will be talking about on each one of your guys' spots. So what I'm here for today is our objective is to pass a city ordinance for the operation of UTVs and golf carts on city streets of Belvedere, right? So what is a UTV? I left you guys all a statute in there of the Illinois law, should be on the after the intro page there. The Illinois statute states that a UTV is any motorized off-highway device designed to travel preliminarily off-highway 64 inches or less in width, having a manufacturer's dry weight of 2,000 pounds or less for gas-powered engines or 3,000 pounds or less for electric engines. Traveling on 4 or more non-highway tires designed with a non-straddle seat and a steering wheel for steering control. What is the golf cart? The statute states the golf cart is a vehicle specifically designed and intended for the purpose of transporting 1 or more persons and their golf clubs or maintenance equipment while engaged in playing a golf, supervising the play of golf, or maintaining the condition of the grounds on a public or private course. So this is important. ATVs and off-highway motorcycles will not be allowed. An ATV is defined as any off-highway device 50 inches or less in width, manufacturer's dry weight of 1,500 pounds or less, traveling on 3 or more wheels with a seat that you straddle and handlebars for steering apparatus. Not allowed. So how does the township become street legal? In the statute under section 1-168.8D, the municipality, township, county, or other unit of local government may authorize by ordinance or resolution the operation of non-highway vehicles on roadways under its jurisdiction if the unit of local government determines that the public safety will not be jeopardized. Also, the unit of local government or the department may restrict the types of non-highway vehicles that are authorized to be used on its streets. If the operation of a non-highway vehicle is authorized under subsection D, the non-highway vehicle may be operated only on city streets where the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour or less. Before permitting the operation of non-highway vehicles on its roadways, the municipality, township, county, other unit of local government of the department must consider the volume, speed, and character of traffic on the roadway and determine whether non-highway vehicles may safely travel on or across the roadway. Upon determining that it is safe, the appropriate signs shall be posted. A person may not operate a non-highway vehicle upon any street, highway, or roadway in this state unless he or she has a valid driver's license issued in his or her name by the Secretary of State. Any person who operates a non-highway vehicle on a street, highway, or roadway shall be subject to the mandatory insurance requirements. A person who drives or is in actual physical control of a non-highway vehicle on a roadway while under the influence is subject to a DUI. Same rules as apply in a car. You know, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, you get a seatbelt ticket. If you're speeding, you get a speeding ticket. It's all there. So what is required for my machine to become street legal? No non-highway vehicle may be operated on a roadway unless at a minimum it has the following: brakes, steering apparatus, tires, rear view mirror, red reflectors on the front and the rear, a slow-moving vehicle emblem on the rear of the vehicle, headlights that emit 500 feet in front, tail lights that emit 100 feet to the rear, brake lights, and turn signals. And then after hours, after like 30 minutes after sunset, the lights have to be on at all times, just like a car. So what roads will UTVs be able to cross? No person operating a non-highway vehicle shall make a direct crossing upon or across any toll road, interstate highway, or controlled access highway in this state. No person operating a non-highway vehicle shall make a direct crossing upon or across any other highway under the jurisdiction of the state except at an intersection of the highway with another public street, road, or highway. Non-highway vehicles, as used in the subsection, shall be allowed to cross a state highway, municipal street, county highway, or road district highway if the operator of the non-highway vehicle makes a direct crossing provided. The crossing is made at an angle of approximately 90 degrees to the direction of the street, road, or highway at a place where no obstruction prevents a quick and safe crossing. The non-highway vehicle is brought to a complete stop before attempting the crossing. The operator of the non-highway vehicle yields the right-of-way to all pedestrian and traffic which constitutes a hazard. When crossing a divided highway, the crossing is only made at an intersection of highway with another public street, highway, or road. So you can't come from a city street, take a left 300 yards down a state highway, and then make a right on a public street. It has to be directly across. There's a bunch of other towns around here that do this already, that have been doing this for a while. The big town around us is Johnsburg. They've been doing this for 13 years now. They have over 400 side-by-sides, UTVs, and golf carts registered in their town every year. McHenry, this is their second year of doing it. Byron, Genoa, Pecatonica, Dixon, Durand, Rochelle, Ringwood. So the next part is, how do I register my golf cart or UTV? So I supplied a couple sample permits in there from Johnsburg, and what they require, Genoa, and I believe the last one's Rochelle. So the city will create a permit application, like the one Johnsburg there has came up with, and that's has all the rules and the regulations on it. Johnsburg says what a UTV is, and by signing the application, the applicant releases the village and the city from any liabilities, anything that will happen with these. So everybody's going to have their own insurance. I called my insurance agent. As of right now, because these are not legal on the street here in town, if I were to get in an accident, I wouldn't have coverage. But as long as I'm operating it in a town that it is legal, I have full coverage. $300,000 they'll cover in an accident or something, whatever I'm liable for. So as of right now, it's not insured or covered under insurance, but if this became legal, I would have full coverage. So the applicant, has to sign it and date it. And then we would fill out this permit application. So I'd put my name, my address on there, my driver's license, date of birth, my driver's license, and my contact information. And then I'd go to fill out my vehicle, what I'm going to register, a golf cart or a UTV, going to put the make, the model, colors, the serial number on it. They're all serialized. And then my insurance company and policy, I have to provide that, that I have valid insurance on this. Then the police department usually does the inspections on these vehicles. They're going to go through this checklist like Johnsburg provided, that it meets all the requirements of what it's supposed to have on there. And then if everything is good, then they'll either approve or deny the registration. And then they're going to issue us a registration number. So this is a registration number through the city. It's nothing to do with the state. It's all through the city registration. There's a couple different options we can do on the registration. Some towns do a registration vehicle sticker. Put it on the front window or the back window. And Johnsburg, what they do is they do license plates, and I put a copy of what that looks like in there. So that's part of the permit application fee that we would get. You'd put a license plate on the front and on the back. You can get it customized to say what you want, or you can just get a random numerical number, There's some advantages over license plates that we would like to do. It's easier for the police to identify who's registered and who's not. If there's a license plate on the back with a year sticker on it, it's easy for anybody to, okay, it's 2022, it's got the new tag on it, it's got a license plate, whereas if somebody wasn't driving with it, it's easier to identify. And then just people, locals in town, if they see a license plate on something, they say, oh, okay, that thing's probably registered, they're probably not out here, doing it illegally. And there's a company around here that makes those. I've been in contact with that. So you'd fill out that form. You'd put your 3 choices of your license plate, what you want it to say. Obviously, it can't have profanity on it or, mean stuff. So then Johnsburg, they also provide a city map that's posted on their city website. It's kind of hard to read, but all the streets that are street legal are highlighted in red, where you can cross, and some of the rules up in the corner there, restrict them to certain streets. Genoa, they do the same thing, they have their example there. You'd put all the driver's license and who's registered to drive the machine. Those are just some examples. Pricing on this. So there would be a first-time registration fee with the city. Most towns, I put examples of their pricing in there. Say it's $100 for the first year for the police to inspect it. So that's what I would pay to get the permit and to get it inspected. And then each additional following year, as long as you have the same machine, it wouldn't have to be inspected. You would just have to renew the registration. So that would be, say, $50. If we did $100 and $50 for the registration. Example, McHenry does $150, Johnsburg is $75 and $25, Byron's $150, Genoa, they're $75 every year. Some of that stuff. And then if I were to buy a new machine, say 3 years down the road, I would have to register that one, and that would be the $100. Whatever, that's a fee that we would have to come up with. We can make it what we want, what the city's interested in. And then the second year, you just be renewing the sticker on it. So I reached out to a lot of people during this. I actually created a petition, and I got a lot of people to sign it in a short amount of time. I had a lot of concerns about safety. Safety is the number one that we're trying to follow here. Side-by-sides, they all have full roll cages on them. They have seat belts for every passenger, and they have some sort of safety net or door on the side of them. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act against Johnsburg. And like I said, Johnsburg has over 400 registered every year. And another big concern I had was drinking and driving. Is this going to promote drinking and driving, right? And that's what everybody thinks people do on golf carts and UTVs. So I went back and asked for 3 years of reports on anything that had to do with a UTV, anything that had to do with a golf cart, anything that had to do with an ATV, ticket, DUI, citation, anything. Johnsburg provided me with that, and there was 1 DUI in 2021. There was 1 accident where the UTV was in the front, followed by a girl in an Audi on the back, and he was going straight, and he decided to make a U-turn, and she swerved around him, and they collided in the front. And that was in May of 2020. There was 3 incidents where the driver did not have a driver's license. They were cited for that. 8 citations for vehicle registration, where the machine just wasn't registered. People didn't get it inspected, and a few of them knew that they were breaking the rules, what the officer wrote in the report. There was 1 ATV citation of operating an ATV, you know, that you straddle on the street. And then there was 2 wrongfully parked vehicles. One was in a park. They were parked next to the tennis court on the grass, and somebody called, and they were asked to park on the parking lot, and they moved. There was no citation issued with that one. And then the other guys were down fishing at the pond, and they were parked in the grass too, and somebody saw that, and there was no citation issued with that. So if they have 400 side-by-sides and golf carts registered a year, and everybody, you know, that's 1,200 rides minimum. You know, if everybody went for 1 ride, and we have 12 citations or 14 citations in 3.5 years, it's about 1%, 1.15% of the people that operate these that don't do it according to the law. So I reached out to a lot of people. Like I said, I got a lot of people to sign the petition. I had a lot of concerns. Like I said, concerns was drinking and safety. Another thing that I would like to add into this for the requirements would be noise level. The machine would have to have a stock exhaust. I would like to add that, you know, just to part of the rules to get it street legal. A car operates either between 60 to 90 decibels. Side-by-sides, they're about 80 to 90 decibels. So it's still within range of most cars. Let's see, certain streets, I got a map here of the city that we kind of went through, and we talked as a group. Certain streets wouldn't have access to, so we were thinking, you know, State Street from Ford all the way down to like Logan, you know, that's just too busy. Half the trucks that are already parked down there, you know, they're hanging out the end, and it's hard to see. So we wouldn't want access, you know, to a main street like that. Even though that's operated by the city and it's 35 miles per hour or less. That would be like an additional restriction. But we were thinking, you know, if we could maybe get access to like Main Street, and that way we can cross the river and get access to both sides of town. We can access, you know, other businesses and stuff on that side. Johnsburg, they also do other offenses. So your first offense would be, you know, like a Class C offense of $200. So you'd pay, you know, say you got a seatbelt ticket, pay the seatbelt ticket, and then you'd pay the Class C offense on top of that. So I know a speeding ticket here in Illinois is what, $164. So if you got a speeding ticket, then you'd pay the $200 on top of that. Then the second time, so you get another speeding ticket, that'd be a Class D offense of $400. So you'd pay the speeding ticket plus the $400. And then your third one, that's $750 plus the ticket, and then your permit would be revoked. And you couldn't renew your permit for your machine. Talked with a guy from Pecatonica who pushed this. They had one issue. They actually allow ATVs there in their town with side-by-sides and golf carts. They had one issue with the guy. They gave him the chance. They said, you know, they told the guy that was in charge, go talk to him, tell him, quit this out, you know, you're breaking the rules, and they did, and he stopped, you know. They didn't even, but other than that, most towns around here don't have problems with this, and they do pretty good with it, and they have a good turnout. I know Genoa, they have 34 side-by-sides and golf carts registered in their town. The service manager up here at Ford, he lives in Genoa. He's got his registered. He said it's great. That's kind of what I have. What kind of concerns, comments do you guys have? Go ahead.
Alderman Snow, go ahead.
So, what is the big draw to drive those versus taking your car? What is the, because if you're not in giddy up mode and yippee-yi-yay, what's the draw?
Well, some people only have, you know, trucks and trailers with a side-by-side, you know, and with the gas prices, you know, it's $5.32 or something now, you know, and diesel's even more expensive. Most of these guys that we ride with, they only have a diesel truck, you know, so if they could ride their side-by-side down to, you know, Aldi and get groceries, you know, I would. It's a lot cheaper to operate one of these. And with the pandemic, the sales of these have gone through the roof. And you can't even just walk into a dealership and get one. You have to order it, which is 6 months to a year from now till it even shows up.
Sounds like our fire truck.
And most of them are even showing up with missing parts on them, you know, because they can't get them. So people just want to spend time outside, you know, with their family. And we spend a lot of money right now going to other states, just like Wisconsin, right over the border in Monroe. It's called the Cheese Trail. It's a 47-mile gravel trail, posted 30 miles per hour. Runs from Monroe to Darlington to Mineral Point, and all the streets up there are street legal too. That trail brings in 98,000 visitors a year and brings in about $15 million of revenue to the local towns. Just people, you know, stopping to get gas, eating out for lunch, you know, spending money in those towns. And for the convenience, you know, it's just something fun that people would like to do, and we would like to use them, you know, more here in our town instead of traveling all over with them.
And one other thing is, we're registering the vehicle, but that only pertains to you and your vehicle. What if your brother borrows it, your son, or whatever, your spouse? They may not be up to date because they're not the ones signing the form.
Like Genoa has in theirs, it has all the registered people they put. I think on their first page, yeah, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 driver's license numbers. So like if Sarah was registered, you know, to ride mine, I'd put her name and her driver's license, date of birth. And that way she would be compliant with all the rules, you know, and like it's like operating a regular vehicle on the street. So if you get a ticket, you know, you're going to pay the same ticket as you would in a car. So they would be held responsible for the rules and the city rules, you know, that the city puts out there on the permit application.
An age requirement.
Yes, you would have to have a valid driver's license, so that'd be 16 or older. Like I said, valid insurance. So if you can operate a car, you can operate one of these. Go ahead.
Alderman Porter.
Yeah, sounds like you did your homework on this one.
Kind of.
Can you name off the cities again, that all the ones that do allow it?
Yeah, McHenry, Johnsburg. Yeah, there's a couple example pricings, what they charge in there. I know McHenry, this is their second year. Their first year, they kind of just put it out there as a test, you know, see what kind of response they would get. And the chief of police and the mayor there actually are big side-by-side people too. So they had a good turnout with it, so they went with a second year. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have to commend you. This was well-researched, thoughtful, and well presented. I see this as actually, I mean, we ride motorcycles, right? And they don't have seatbelts.
No.
And they only got 2 wheels. So I think this being just in town and not on highways is just as safe, if not safer, than riding a 2-wheeled vehicle.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Mike.
Alderman McGee.
Yeah, Ryan and I had talked a little bit, and I told him that I probably wasn't on board with allowing the golf carts, and mainly just because I think the UTV is a little safer than a golf cart with a roll cage and seat belts.
Yeah.
And I told him that if that wasn't straddled to this agreement, then I probably would be okay with it too. And I think Chief Woody, conversation I had with him, I think he felt the same way, that a golf cart may hold up traffic more than a UTV would.
Yeah, my side-by-side, I mean, it'll operate sufficiently over 35 miles per hour. You know, a golf cart, I can see that not operating as fast, a little bit slower. I think McHenry's rules that it has to operate at least 19 miles per hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. That's just a rule that they came up with. But, yeah, you know, there's a lot of people that want the golf carts too, but I'm open to trying stuff, you know, and if we can try just the UTVs, you know, first and see how it goes, we'd be up for that.
Alderman Fleury, then Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. And Ryan and I had several conversations also, and, you know, at first, kind of like Mike, my first concern was safety, but again, even our first conversation, Ryan did a really good job of kind of laying everything out and giving comparisons to, like Marcia said, about motorcycles. So, you know, after that, you know, I've obviously seen you've done a lot of research, and, you know, I'm glad you had the opportunity tonight to, you know, bring it forward and see as a council where we want to go. But, I mean, it does, you know, a lot of information there to digest, but I think that you put things well together. And you said you had a petition. How many people actually signed that?
I didn't count all of them, but there's 9 pages and 19 on each, missing a couple here and there.
Sure, okay.
So I have a copy if you want it or somebody wants to hold on to it. That was like 1 week of getting around, talking to people. The number 1 business in town people want access to is Dairy Ripple. That's who I talked to. They said, oh, I just want to ride my side-by-side to Dairy Ripple on a Friday night and get an ice cream cone. So I went to Dairy Ripple. I talked to the owner there and the owner's son, and we were probably there for an hour and a half after closing, speaking with them and what their thoughts were. And they're on board, and they think it'll, you know, bring a lot of business to their town. They also own a couple other businesses here in town, you know, that I would support, you know, because of that. Local, you know, they own the Country Market and Cherries or whatever that is over by the DMV they own. And they kind of thought if we followed all these rules and, you know, made it street legal per the Illinois Vehicle Code, that we could do this safely. So they were on board.
Okay, well, that's good. Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you again. So concerning the golf carts, I think you had mentioned that they would not be on State Street, so you wouldn't be able to go to the Dairy Ripple?
Well, we'd be able to get, if we were able to cross Main Street, right? That's because there's only 4 bridges that cross the river from.
Right.
I live up by Boone North High School, so we couldn't get to this side of town, right? Because it's Pleasant Street, Main Street, State Street, and Appleton. Which I know Appleton's 35, State Street's 35 or 30, and then Main Street. But if we were able to cross Main Street, we could pull up behind Planet Fitness and park right in the parking lot there, and then there is a crosswalk right by that bridge that we would be able to walk across.
Right. So Appleton's actually 40, so you won't be able to go there at all. But
Where does it? I haven't driven the whole road, but isn't Appleton right behind the Ford dealer 35?
it goes 35, and then once you get across Locust Street, it goes to 40 out towards Chrysler. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I have one of these maps here that was provided. We kind of went through and drew like circles where we would want approved crossings. Now, all the side streets that go down State Street there's a lot of businesses, you know, like the transmission shop, and you might not be able to see around that corner. So we were looking at maybe getting like approved crossings, you know, at Harrison Street, right there at Aldi. It's a stoplight, right? We can make a direct crossing. Nobody's gonna be turning left and nobody's gonna be turning right. That way we can get behind Aldi and back in there. And then another one we were looking at is like Lincoln. You know, there's a stoplight there. You can make the crossing across, straight, nobody's turning, nobody's going left or right, and then we can get to like Dottie Park and Sips and Sprinkles.
So how fast does a golf cart go?
Oh, it depends if you have a gas motor or an electric motor. They come with both. You could probably get a golf cart. I don't have a golf cart. You could probably get a golf cart going 25 miles an hour.
Because
If I were to guess.
the streets in town, other than Appleton, are all 25. And, you know, as far as holding up traffic, if you're going 25 in a 25,
You're-
maybe we're going to slow people down enough so they're not speeding in traffic.
You know-
It might actually be a good thing.
I agree with you. It's going to have a slow-moving vehicle sign. It's no different than adding a tractor, you know, farm equipment to the road, and, you know,
Okay.
even on a 45.
Alderman Porter, do you have anything else?
Just one question. You're talking about license plates, maybe I missed this, but are you buying a license plate from the state just like any other, like a motorcycle or car?
No. It's through a company that manufactures these specifically. It's like a custom license plate, like the one there in Johnsburg. They put, you know, the city of Johnsburg on it, so we could put, you know, city of Belvedere and that. So your registration would pay for that license plate too. I think the company only charges $20 a plate, so they would custom make that. Or we can do city stickers. A lot of towns just do the city stickers. But kind of as a group of people that I've been talking with, you know, we would pay a little bit more to have a license plate, just for the ease of identifying it. You know, be easier for the police, it'd be easier for neighbors, you know, and people of the town to.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Alderman Porter?
No, I guess the only thing about the buying the license plates from the state, of course, that money goes towards fixing roads and things like that. So if you're not buying it from the state, there's no road, you know, maintenance fees from that.
This fee would go directly towards the city. So like I said, this whole thing it's an Illinois statute that the town has to adopt, right? Once the town adopts it, the town makes the rules, right? Illinois has the guidelines on what we have to follow to make it street legal and what the town has to follow. Like damaging the roads and everything, that was another concern. People have said, oh, it's an off-highway, you know, vehicle operating on city streets. So if you go buy tires, you know, big off-road tires for your truck, look at what they're rated for, you know, 30, 40,000 miles. Now, if you go buy an all-terrain tire, you know, something that's rated at 60 to 80,000 miles, why is that? You know, because the mud tire is going to get destroyed on the street. It's a softer tire. They're not going to last. So really, in the end, I'm causing more damage to my vehicle than I'm causing to the city streets, you know, at a vehicle that weighs 2,000 pounds or less. You know, just my Chevy Cruze weighs, you know, 2,800 or 3,200 pounds as a four-door sedan.
Okay, I'm gonna, Chief Shadle, would you, you've had your
Thank you,
hand
Your
up.
Honor.
It's probably tired.
It was
by now.
getting tired, so thank
Okay,
you.
sorry.
Hey, Ryan, real quick question, and I don't have a pack in front of me, but you said
I have extras if you want one.
laws like the seat belts and brake light laws would be applicable to these vehicles. So if someone had a golf cart, it would have to have a seat belt, and they would have to wear it.
Yes.
And it would have to have brake lights, and
Yep.
they'd have to be working.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it doesn't pass that inspection by the police, you know, department, then they get denied the permit. So it has to be presentable, you know, when you go to register. And we could do like a registration, you know, the first and third Saturday of the year. We could do a registration by appointments only, you know, whatever works, you know, people would be open to. I don't see that we're going to have 400 of these things waiting in line, you know, the first day this is allowed. You know, it's going to cost me about $1,000 to make mine fully street legal per that code. Just to get the turn signal kit, you know, I'm going to have to wait probably 12 days to get that here. It's all custom made out in Idaho. And then I gotta have time to install it, not everybody can install it, so, Hammer Time, they sell the kits right there. I spoke with the parts manager there. He said, he thought this was a good idea. They sell the kits, they sell everything there to make it street legal. It would help their business out too.
Okay, we'll keep moving on. Alderman Snow?
Two things, wanted to hear from the police chief, and then also, the clerk as far as registration and stuff. Most of our licenses are done on May 1st, kind of a turnaround time. Is that something that you would want, or another date than May 1st maybe, but?
I haven't seen any of this stuff, but I would assume maybe it's gonna all go through the police department.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I haven't seen this packet either. It was not provided to me. We don't have to do a registration program if you don't want to. You can allow them, put in all the requirements, everything they have to have, and simply if they're stopped and they don't have the equipment, the officer will write a ticket. They'll go to court just like any other traffic ticket. Registration might be a mechanism to pre-screen the vehicles and things like that. So from that perspective, it might be a good idea, but it is not required. You do not have to do that.
I have more packets. I have
Chief.
one more if somebody wants one, and I can print off a bunch more if somebody else would like one. I printed 12. I didn't know how many people were gonna be here.
Chief Woody, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment pertaining to the registration. Not that I'm looking for any more administrative work for my staff, but in terms of being able to regulate the equipment and the safety, if this is something that the council felt was prudent for our community, that would be something that I would strongly encourage, just to make sure that, each vehicle does have the necessary equipment to make sure that they're going to be providing the most safety possible for their passengers and drivers, not to mention, the other motorists on the street. In terms of golf carts, yes, there is a concern in terms of, impeding traffic, specifically on State Street, which when we originally talked was what I envisioned your intention would be, because you had mentioned going down to the Dairy Ripple, which is a 30, 35 mile per hour. And, the golf carts that I've been on, as much as I try to get them to go that fast.
Yeah, they just don't.
They just don't. So yes, that was a concern of mine. UTVs, ATVs, in preparation for this, trying to kind of put things into perspective for myself, I looked at the U.S. Consumer Safety, U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, which has statistics pertaining to UTVs, ROVs, other off-road vehicles, and the incidents that they collected in terms of statistical data over a 4-year period pertaining to emergency room visits, and I'm just going and understand, this is both, I would imagine, on-road and off-road statistics, so this is not necessarily comparing apples with apples, but I couldn't find anything where they kept statistics specifically for communities that have authorized, UTVs on their roadways. But, take it for what it's worth, and if you want to do, take a look on your own, it's not hard to find. If you just Google the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, it does come up there. But just briefly, for ER visits, estimated number of injuries from 2015 to 2019, it's over 500,000. And then you look at just specifically fatal incidents from 2015 to 2017, which were the statistics that they had. When you take ATVs, which, it sounds like it's your intention to exclude them altogether.
ATVs and dirt bikes, anything that's straddled, go-karts, dune buggies, not allowed.
Well, I know dirt bikes, as long as they have turn signals, headlights, so on and so forth, they're street legal.
It
as
is
well.
under the statute too, that it does state, the statute does say that you can do ATVs and off-highway motorcycles, but a lot of towns haven't adopted that, and I'm not pushing that.
Sure.
Because of the safety on that, there is no seatbelt on ATVs. It is a handlebar. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit harder to see. There are towns around here that do it. They have good response with it.
Yeah, and, you know,
What state is this for?
this is US, United
US,
States.
okay.
Yeah, United States. So it does have some statistics for Illinois. Let me go through this, and I'll get to that here just real quick. So this, again, this is for the US. So if you take ATVs, which is a significant statistic, out of the equation, you're looking at a total of roughly 540 fatalities for your recreational off-road vehicles, your UTVs, or according to their statistical analysis, unknown ROV or UTV. Now, specifically, Illinois, it looks like reported fatal incidents from 2015 to 2017 was 48. Yeah, so 48. And that's specifically for Illinois alone. So.
For what years, 2015 to 2019?
No, for fatalities, it's 2015 to 2017.
48 deaths.
Yeah.
That's the whole state.
That's correct,
And that's-
according to this.
That could be somebody operating on their private property, that could be somebody operating on the street, that could be somebody operating at an off-road park, right?
It's
Anywhere.
Yeah, it's possible, yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Alderman Snow.
And because obviously we just got this information today, but obviously I don't think we should move it forward
No.
to do anything right away, but maybe we should have a mini committee get together and discuss this more and throw out ideas, or just
We
bring
can-
it up in committee some more
We
to
can,
discuss.
we can put it back on a committee level and bring it back up. Certainly, the information you had tonight. I know that Mr. Kilburn and I had a conversation, and he had asked me about it, and he had made a comment to me that, people would like to take their ATV up to the dairy ripple, well, or their children in a UTV or a golf cart or what have you. And, my immediate question was, why not just take your truck or your car? Why would you have to have a UTV or a golf cart to be able to go up to the dairy ripple? And my other thought with it is you also have the police are going to be involved with a lot more. I know they have a full plate, but you're going to have an enforcement with something that isn't a necessity. Is this something that we need to do? Is this something that we have to do? The other thing I will tell you is that a lot of people don't like the fact that you have vehicles such as this driving around the neighborhoods when it's quiet. You've just compounded, you've taken a quality of life issue out of the neighborhoods, where if you have individuals that are up and down the street and they, it sounds great. It sounds like you're not going to have any enforcement issues, but I guess the one thing that wasn't in this was how many of the individuals were not able to be caught or apprehended because they have they can go where police vehicles cannot go. So you have a quality of life issue. I'm opposed to this. I was forthright with Mr. Kilburn when he brought this to me, that I think that to do this is something that, why do you need to do it? You might have a petition with 108 signatures or whatever you have on there, which is fine. But I think the majority of the people that live in the neighborhoods, I think they're going to frown upon that. I think they're going to look at it as another noise issue, and is it a necessity? And that's my only concern, is what are the residents? If you wanted me, I could go around and get a petition for 1,000 people. It doesn't.
There are a lot of people against it, but a
Yeah,
lot of people
well,
don't.
Don't interrupt me, let me
Sorry.
finish, thank you. So if you do ask the people, or you do want, I have people calling me now with ATVs that are going up and down their street, and they want to know why they can't be apprehended. Where's law enforcement? So because of convenience, because some people want to have a UTV or a golf cart on the streets, to me, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the best thing that you could possibly do. I mean, is that really sensible? I mean, just because some people want it, doesn't mean that it's a good idea either. But I think we need to use a little bit of common sense before we do it, but we definitely need to come back to the committee, and we need to talk about it before we do this. But Alderman Porter, then Alderwoman Freeman.
Yeah, just, I'm not saying I'm for or against it at this point, but just one comment is I do know of at least several private communities, just subdivision communities where people love to drive around on their ATVs and golf carts and just socialize with other people. It's a little easier than, doing it in a car, because like an open vehicle and things like that. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you. Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to respectfully disagree about the noise thing. I have motorcycles flying up and down my street all hours of the night, and they are loud. Some of them are loud. I think that this gentleman mentioned a noise thing in his presentation where they would have to be mufflered like a vehicle and would not be, if any, or not much louder than a car. I mean, I've heard cars with loud mufflers. I've heard trucks, diesel trucks, and I have a lot of motorcycles that are really loud that go up and down my street all the time. I don't think that an ATV would be that much of a bother.
Well, I would agree with you. There are motorcycles and loud cars and what have you. To me, if you have these, you've added these now to the roadways, and we do have, they do have pipe ordinances or pipe laws regarding vehicles, and those are definitely not necessarily adhered to. And if you have this as well, you're going to be adding to the noise. So I don't know if that's conducive to making the problem less, or if that's conducive to making the problem more. But because you already have an issue, I don't know how that, and if individuals, if they don't comply with this, then we have law enforcement. They're going to be trying to chase down vehicles to enforce it, and people are still going to be unhappy, as you and I and everybody else who contend with it. So, Alderman Snow?
I'm not a big fan of loud cars or motorcycles especially, but the increase in traffic, I don't know that you're going to have the increase in traffic because they would have taken their car, now they're taking the UTV. So I don't know that plays, but I get your point. The enforcement, that can be an issue. And if worse comes to worse, if we were to approve this, if it doesn't work out in 6 months to a year, we can repeal it and kibosh it. And the other thing is, in theory, and Attorney Drella might be able to weigh in on this, he could get a petition to have something put on a referendum to approve it. Yeah. Or we could do the referendum, advisory referendum, to see if the voting public, not everybody, because not everybody votes, but the voting people, if they see it as a good thing or a bad thing. Just tossing that out there.
Okay.
As a survey, per se.
Thank you. Alderwoman Prather?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to kind of see this move forward to another committee level, just to further discussion down the road at this point, because I don't think any of us have all the information, and I think we'd, not that you weren't thorough.
Oh, I wasn't expecting everybody to be on board.
No.
Like, when I brought it to
Yeah.
their attention, they're like, what is this? It requires,
Yeah, it's definitely coming back to committee.
something to
So
further look into.
We'll leave it at that. We'll bring this back to committee.
Can I say a couple things?
Sure.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Like I said, McHenry, they did a trial year. Their first year was a trial year. They wanted to see what happened, what kind of response they got. And then once that year was up, they got back together and they reviewed everything that happened in their town, what kind of response they had. There's posts on Facebook. People say, oh, we didn't even notice, that there were UTVs and golf carts on the street. Like I said, we're not going to have hundreds of these things right away. It's going to take a while. We'll probably get, I know at least 15 people, 20 people that would go out tomorrow and get theirs, street legal. It's not going to be an everyday thing. It's just going to be like a recreational thing, to get groceries here and there. Back to the noise level. Nothing prevents me going out and buying a Harley and putting an aftermarket exhaust and come to Jack Rose on Thursday night. I mean, it's right next to the building. I was here 2 Thursdays ago, The street's all blocked off. I'm not gonna tell you what they did, but I know my side-by-side is not even close of capable of what those guys were doing. The stock exhaust, people don't really put modified exhaust on UTVs. It's not a thing, you know, it's more of a dirt bike thing and a motorcycle thing that people put the aftermarket exhaust on, so. And one more thing, another thing that would be open to is like a time limit, you know, from a certain time in the morning till a certain time at night. If we were allowed, you know, 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., it's gotta be off the road. You know, that way, that is after quiet hours. I don't know what the city quiet hours are. But we're not looking for a free-for-all, you know, a bunch of maniacs going around. Everybody that owns one of these spend a lot of money on them. I've got 30 grand invested in mine. It's not something that I'm looking to get taken away or something to abuse. You know, that's a lot of money to act reckless on, to destroy. You know, I'm not looking, it's already gonna cost me $1,000. I'm not looking to pay another $1,200, $1,300 in fines, you know, not to use my machine on the streets. I appreciate the time, guys.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Appreciate the opinions. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
My contact information is on that front page, my phone number, address, email. Shoot me a text, a phone call, concerns, comments, questions. One other thing too, I asked people for their concerns. Another one was, what about kids? You know, we could make it mandatory that kids under a certain age have to wear helmets, you know, even in the back seat. That's something that we could come up with together as a group and make our own rules.
Okay,
So, thanks, guys.
thank you for coming. All right, item B, we have flooding concerns on Oak Street. We have Mike Myrtle here. Mike? How you doing, Mike?
Good, you?
Good. Thanks for coming.
Mike Myrtle. I live out on Oak Street by the old St. Joe's Hospital back over there. And I've been battling a water issue for at least 13 years now since I purchased this house. I've been all avenues with Brent. I think, Mr. Drella, you were in a room one time. We had a conversation and looked at pictures and asked Brent for rectification on the problem also. And here I am again, going on my 14th year with the same issues that are getting worse, because I think of, honestly, the condition of that building too. There's no upkeep, there's no gutters. We solved the problem for maybe a couple months, but now the problem's back and it's worse than it's ever been. And I know you've contacted me. I work weird hours now, so, and Brent also. I mean, and my questions to you now at this point, Brent, are 14 years of conversations, arguments, right? And I'm not gonna lie about that. Heated arguments about this and about these conditions of what came down from other neighbors, mountains of cat litter that were in neighbors' yards behind me. So when the river would come to me, all of that came into my house and into my crawl space. He's had videos, he's had pictures. I've been down to the health department. Nobody seems to care. The previous owner that lived next door to me was, the recent thing was, well, me and him didn't get along, which, fine. He was piling up his dog feces, okay? And I got pictures of this. Brent's seen them, the health department's seen them. Nobody's done nothing. Nobody batted an eye. I've got 2 children that live in my house. And like I've asked Brent, the people at the health department, would you want this coming into your house with your kids? And there's no answer. I've had people come to my yard survey with nails and pins to see elevations 5 years ago. Where did that money go to, Brent, that we had those people come to my house and check elevations? Because that's my money I'm paying in taxes that we're supposed to fix the problem, kind of. You know, you're sending engineers out to my house. Where did the engineer go after he left my house and put orange things out there for a year that sat there and nothing?
So, Mr. Myrtle, I'll give you a little background history for Mr. Myrtle on Oak Street, where he's at. The natural ground levels and the topography for his property, his property is part of the overland flow route for that drainage basin that goes up to the top of, when I say the top of the hill, virtually was top of the hill at the old St. Joe's Hospital. Because that area is basically has been developed, has never been subdivided and developed in that manner, it has no retention, no kind of stormwater drainage characteristics to it. So basically, when the rainfall comes, and if we get the 100-year storm, quote-unquote, events, Mr. Myrtle does have a river that goes to the side of his house. As he stated, he and the neighbor to the south did not get along with each other, and the neighbor to the south did some things that would cause more of the water to go on Mr. Myrtle's property than his own. But short of basically doing, quote, I would say subdivision improvements, if that area was ever subdivided, and there's a couple of undeveloped tracts there, that would certainly help the situation.
The house won't be there much longer if we continue at this route with the rot, and especially at winter time in my thaw time.
So,
I mean, that it's structurally ruining my house, Brent. I mean,
So-
we've seen it throughout the years.
So the overland flow route, we've made some improvements here since Mr. Myrtle has been been residing at that residence, with storm sewers in the front. We did some work down on, once it gets across the railroad tracks, and further south to the river. That work has been done, but again, the pipe system, as you know, is typically designed for a 10-year storm. And then anything over a 10-year storm has to go the overland flow route, which is the overland route which goes through Mr. Myrtle's yard. The latest we did, what he referred to a couple years ago, we actually went up and got permission from the current property owner of the St. Joe's Hospital, and it's the powerhouse, if you will, on the north side of Julian Street is that section. And we did some berming, we did some grading, and some additional work there to try to keep most of what we could out of the hospital property in the storm system, and actually take it down Julian and Andrews to the river there. So we were successful. We did manage to capture some of that, but again, when that hospital and that development was done, there was no regulations in place at that time for stormwater. So those are the kinds of things that are dealing with in the neighborhood. And like I said, because of it's basically undeveloped, he's at the bottom of the hill, and that's where all the water goes.
But
At this point in time, really the only thing we could do, as I've explained to Mr. Myrtle, is it's on private property. We could theoretically get easements from him and the adjoining property owner, do some additional grading, put in an additional storm sewer inlet, but again, that's only going to carry the 10-year storm event. You're still going to have the overland flow route for the 100-year storm event. But at least with that, you could have a more designated channel, and it would be shared. If you could put it down through the property line adjoining between two properties, then that's a little bit less impact. Both properties would be impacted.
Well, I already
the same.
took that fence out for you. It's gone now, so you can bring some machines in.
Well, again, but we would need easements from both property owners and have an agreement there. So
And my other question, Brent, would be-
grading, the elevation, the engineering that you're referring to basically was in support of doing that additional grading work that we could be doing if and when those easements are granted.
If this is a known issue, and then you've told me this even prior to me moving here, the city has been, this is a known issue, correct?
Well, I guess it's known issue as far as identified in a basin and where the water's going to go.
Right, then why did I purchase this house without being disclosed this? And why can't I get flood insurance? And I mean, if this has been a known thing, why did I roll the dice? I purchased a house that gets a river. I mean, I want to show you guys what I deal with even on a 2-day rain. You say it's these 100-year rains. It's not. I try to get you out there even after it's just drizzled for 2 days. And it starts coming down. I mean, you've even given me the excuses that it's natural springs. If it was a natural spring, we'd be constantly wet.
You know, I might add, when private individuals purchase property, it's not up to the city to go out and figure out every purchase that's out there. There's, your realtor, there's lawyers, there's certain amount of research that the buyer beware type thing that you have to do. You know, we're not responsible for what every homeowner may
No,
buy.
I get that part, but if he's
You know,
saying
But I
that
just,
this is part of the basin, I mean, it should be put on record somewhere that, hey, you know,
well, it's the low, it's where the water flows, correct? That's the low spot,
but
is how it flows. I understand what you're saying, but I also, you know, think that, you know, if you have,
sunny day.
if you have easements, if you give the city easement rights, perhaps we might be able to alleviate it some if we could have easement, but if the flow is more than the capacity right now, then I guess that's a long-range plan, is Brent, I would guess.
Well, again, because the area tributary to his property is basically undeveloped, there's a couple of houses up there that have been there for quite a while, but basically the Rainier is in its natural conditions, and that's where the water goes. Probably the best thing that could happen to Mr. Myrtle would be if somebody purchased that vacant property and developed it, because then they would have to account for all the stormwater runoff and be able to control it and controlled release in that standpoint. But short of that, again, we can try to make the overland flow route as defined as we can within the bounds of what's there for the existing improvements, which would require easements on the properties, but even that is only going to handle whatever those current restrictions are with the space available. It probably would not handle any and all events.
Alderwoman Frank.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I've been talking to Mike for a couple of years, and I can't believe the problems that he's had, but I'm wondering if we can keep the people that own St. Joseph Hospital, and I'm not going to say their name, but can we hold them accountable? I mean, they buy the land or the buildings, and they do nothing. I mean, when they cleaned it up a couple of years ago, it was a small fix. It helped a little bit. Can they put the big boulders, those big rocks that you put around the river, something up there to?
Well, I've asked Brent to block off that entrance too, from what I see when it rains when I go up there, okay? You got that building right here, the hospital's right here. That road does this, goes like this. So, and I've tried to explain to Brent a few times about this, but I must be wrong. The opening to that parking lot goes down like this to where you guys have cleaned out back there. And if you go look at that runoff and all the road debris that goes into that parking lot, it's all coming up from by Mike Chamberlain's. All in that whole road looks like it just pitches that way, goes down into that parking lot, and then straight downhill right into my crawl space. And I've asked you about that. Can't we curb that? Send it to the sewer system that's 20 feet from that opening. I mean, I think there's a few things we can do, Brent, because I mean, the water is just, that's ridiculous. I don't think that's common flow. That's an excess amount of water. I mean, and when it comes down for days later, something's running off up top.
Okay, well, I guess I wasn't worried about.
I mean, you know,
days later. I know when we have again.
Well, I mean, in the pictures, it's sunny. Brent, this is 13 years we've doing this. I'm not even.
Well,
I mean, we could go back and forth. Like I've asked you, you know, put something up top there. I don't care. Build a concrete wall. I've even told you I was going to have truckloads of dirt come in and just build me a 6-foot wall of dirt around the whole house just to save my property. I'm tired of rebuilding, Brent. I'm tired of buying sump pumps. When it does rain like that, that comes in my house. That water is coming through vents into my crawl space. There is no sump pumps out there that can keep up with that. At $100 a pop, I buy 6-7 of these a season for 13 years.
Let's look at this. Let's see if there's a way that we can divert some of that water on those, I don't know, they could say 100-year rain events that seem to happen maybe every 4 or 5 years or even less, once a year. So let's do this.
It's not on just heavy rains. I mean, if we get rain for 2 consecutive days, it starts something builds up there, and then it just starts raging. And then it comes for days later. I mean, it takes weeks for the sides of the house to dry out. I can't even keep my crawl space dry half the time. I mean, I got 2 humidifiers, dehumidifiers down there that run 24/7. I'm at my ends with it, and I just can't keep up with it no more.
Yeah.
I mean, I've asked Brent to come out there and clean the end of the sewer line by the tracks. I've been cleaning that and weed whacking that for, well, how long has it been since you put that in there? I've been cleaning down at the bottom of the tracks, keeping that waterway opening, Brent. And I've asked you to send people out, and nobody ever shows up down there. So then I take it upon myself just for the simple fact of I'm trying to save my house, the health of my family. I don't need mold growing. And I mean, there is no reason why I'm down at the end of the block there weed whacking and taking a shovel and digging out 3 feet down because of just all the excess that piles up there at the track where you have it opened to go to. I mean, why am I cleaning that? And you know I've called you and asked people to come down there. They come down there, they drive the cul-de-sac, they look at, and then we're out.
Okay.
And then I notice that it's gonna rain in a couple of days, so I try to save myself, and I gotta go break my back on the city's sewer to keep it flowing.
Well, let's do this. We'll sit down and we'll look at some of the options. If we haven't done our part with some of the options that are feasible, then we'll do that. And also, we'll take a look at the topography over there and take a look at if there is something that we're missing. Maybe there's something we're missing. But we'll take a look at it. And,
Well, now that the hospital, they took all the gutters off, so all, the roof water from that is all just comes straight down to that parking lot. And I mean, that's a lot of square footage of water that's gonna come make it down by me. Like I said, it curved it a little bit, the cleaning up on the hill. I'll give you that. It cleaned it up because it's got a little berm, right? But it still makes it over it. There's so much water coming that the berm is nothing for it. I mean, it just crusts it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Myrtle, we will take a look at it, and we'll see if we can come up with some better alternatives. And
I did remove the fence, Brent. I mean, so that excuse is now out the window too. My new guy, the new neighbor that just bought the place is awesome. He couldn't make it in here. They just got back from San Francisco this morning. He said, do whatever it takes, because the first rain, he even saw it, and he's knocking on my door. What is this? And I told him to contact you, Brent, honestly.
I was going to say, can you send me his contact information? Do you have it?
Not on me, I can get it.
But you have it, you can forward it to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I have a 2-part question. First for Brent, is St. Joe's mostly responsible?
There's a portion of that that's tributary to that basin, yes.
So part 2, I think, is for Attorney Drella. Why do we let private property owners have buildings that just are decrepit like that? We don't allow residential homes to fall into that much disarray and be that much of a liability. So why is it that we would allow a property like that owned by a private person? It's not even a company. What can we do about making them either tear that thing down or fix it to code? Because like I said, we don't allow residential to do that. Why are we allowing that particular person to let that property remain in that state for so long?
It's a two-faceted question, I think, because we're here talking about stormwater runoff. I'm going to presume that at the time the hospital was built, it complied with, actually I think it might predate our subdivision codes, but complied with whatever was in place at that point regarding stormwater retention, detention, things like that. Once it's built, once it's permitted, we can't simply, out of the blue, impose new stormwater restrictions upon that property. If they were to make changes to it, expand the scope, expand the use, add new buildings, things like that, then we'd be having a different conversation. But as far as stormwater goes, what was permitted back in, I can't remember when that was built, but way before my time, at least here, it presumably complied with all the city's ordinances at that point. stormwater retention detention, pre-1990s was really a lot more lax than it is now in anybody's codes. You get back early enough, there was no ordinances on stormwater retention detention, which is one of the reasons why he's having this issue, because when his house was built, there probably were no codes on that. The second part of your question deals more with dilapidation of buildings, which is not necessarily the same as the runoff question we're talking about tonight. We have had them through the compliance mechanisms in the building department on multiple times where we've had to issue fines and bring them in and get them into compliance and things like that. As far as I know, granted, I don't drive down there. I'm assuming they're in compliance right now because I haven't seen a ticket on my desk in a couple, 3 years probably. There is no requirement that it look like it be open for business. It doesn't have to be 100%. Not supposed to have chipped paint. Obviously, no broken windows. My understanding is the ones that were broken are either replaced or boarded up now, which is legitimate. They can do that. We had problems with a lot of weeds in the parking lot for a while in previous years, and they went out there and, frankly, after having to hound them for quite a while, they get it taken care of. I have not heard a complaint come across my desk regarding that property since at least last spring. When I say last spring, I'm thinking spring of 21. It might have been 2020, the last time I saw a complaint on the property.
I think you're right, I have received broken window complaints and vandalism complaints, graffiti complaints on that property. I don't know. I don't know what they had up there at one time for any type of water, any gutters that would, send the roof water to a certain area if the gutters are not on there, or what they were originally, and if they affect flooding, the water runoff issue affects downstream, which it is a sizable amount if it's coming off of that roof and driveway. So maybe that's something that I don't know. I don't know what type of gutters they had on there at one time, if any, or if those, if they'd removed them as part of their when they demoed the inside of that. I have no idea. I don't know if you know, Brent. But.
I'm not sure about that. I know that the property owner has allowed us to do, as Mike mentioned previously, we did some additional berming, some grading work to help alleviate that issue. If there's more to be done there, if we can do more, if we go farther closer to Julian to the east, all along there, we may have to involve the adjoining property owner to allow us to construct a berm there that would suffice or do perhaps some additional retainage, and certainly we can reach out and do that too. So the current property owner would probably be brought into the conversation.
It's
at
for
least
sale now.
To do that part.
That whole section's for sale.
Oh, the houses?
From the cabin to the
Okay.
backside's for sale.
Okay, so we can certainly have those discussions, and Mike's case is in some ways quite similar, other ways a little bit different, but to other parts of town, as you know, on the south side, with the stormwater study and stuff that we did, the reason why they're having those issues is because back in the day, he said before the building codes were adopted, and especially the stormwater regulations were implemented, all the buildings and stuff and development in the city were done without any regard to the stormwater retention, and that's what we're faced with now on the south side of town especially, is being able to retrofit or create that in to help resolve some of those flooding issues, again, especially on the south side, just because of the geology on the south side of town versus the north side of the river.
Okay, let's give us a chance to look at it, look at the infrastructure over there as well, see what we can come up with regarding any of the runoff, if we can alleviate that, do a better job. We'll certainly take a good look at that, and we'll call you. We'll call you back. I appreciate you coming up. Any other questions for Mike? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mike. Okay, moving on, under other, item C, we have the fire department, the sale of 2020 Ford 550 XL, which is 142, is that right?
Yes, Your Honor. I wanted to ask real quick if the council would want to take 5 minutes just to stretch their legs. And if they do, fine. If not, no problem.
We're in here for the duration. Okay. Sure.
I was trying to give you guys a little break. I know if your attention span is like mine, an hour and 15 minutes is pushing it. So I wanted to bring these to you tonight. Two separate proposals. I promise I'll make it as simple as possible. In the background, a lot of people did a lot of work to come up with these, and I will make it clear and help you guys make a good decision on this. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about is the sale of 142. So when I became chief and I had my first talk with each shift and the men, I talked to them about budgets. I talked to them about a zero balance budget, and I said, guys, the city, we operate on a zero balance budget. That means if you buy something, that means you can't buy something else. It's set in a box. And I said, the other thing about budgets is that taxes are not free gifts from the goodwill of the people. You know, that these taxes, it was actually the day I had to pay my property taxes, and I'm thankful to pay them because I know the services they provide. But I told those guys, and it resonated, that they're not free gifts, and it's money taken legally by law with the threat of fines or foreclosure of property. And so I said that when we spend money, we're going to spend it wisely and efficiently. So, and I said, but however, having said that, to provide services costs money. And so our job is to determine how best to spend money on them for their benefit. So this is one of those zero balance budget yes or no scenarios. And that's why the first item on the agenda is requesting to sell 142. 142, if you were on the council when it was purchased, might have had the expectation that it was going to replace an engine, that it could do what an engine can do, that it's going to keep the big trucks off the road. I apologize for that. I can't change that. 142, in actuality, replaced 140, which is our alternate response vehicle that we still have. It's an ambulance, and it's still in service, and it's a ALS response vehicle, a dive vehicle. So now 142 is that ALS part of that. In 2021, 142, we run it when we have staffing, responded to 56 calls. 142 is a great vehicle. It really is. It deploys water in 17 seconds. So I'm very proud to say at the fire department, we can deploy water in under a minute. If you watch YouTube videos and you pull up, search a house fire, and you watch from the time they set that parking brake to when they're actually flowing water, you'll see 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Our guys have done it in 42 seconds. So, but 142 is a good vehicle. It can be deployed, like I said, quickly, and it can suppress a lot of fire. When we bought it, before we did, we went to Middleton, Wisconsin. It's a department that has a lot of money for a lot of different apparatus, and they're really good at using these. And they lit a barn on fire inside of an old heavy timber barn, and they lit this barn on fire, and they put inside of it mattresses, they had furniture, just things that have very high heat release rates. They lit that on fire. They waited until the entire building flashed, And then as all fires do, they become ventilation limited, and then they start to decay. It wasn't until then that we used a 20 GPM nozzle with fire blowing out of the front and all four sides of this huge barn, and we suppressed that fire with 60 gallons of water in probably a minute. Okay, so this thing, Mayor, you saw it when we did it, and Alderman Fleury, you came there. This thing will suppress fire. It's quick, it's easy to get around. It's a great vehicle. Alderman McGee, sorry, sir. It's a great vehicle. I like the vehicle. However, Belvedere is a two-engine town. We have two. So if I take one engine out of service, I now have one. Remove the engines 50%. So we have in town, standard response for a fire is two engines in a truck. This is just a regular, this is automatic alarm within the fire service, two engines in a truck. We're able to do that with our two engines from the city, truck from District 2. So how we operate too is we actually, most departments say, you're an engine company, you do engine work, you do suppression. You're a truck company, you get there, you're doing search and rescue, you're doing forcible entry. We don't do that, we have just two. So first engine on scene does suppression, second, truck work, forcible entry, search and rescue, rescues the people. One thing that 140 does not have is a second line. It's very standard and best practice within the fire service is that you pull your initial attack line, then your second line you pull and you leave it at the front door, and that's your backup line. Okay, that's something 142 can't do. There's other things 142 can't do, like on the Jackson Street fire. We had a two-vehicle response that day. Luckily, 150 was in service, and 102 was the other vehicle, the one I'm proposing that we replace. 102 pulled up, and where the front door of that apartment was and the way the smoke conditions were, they had to pull the skid lay off the back to suppress that. So the 200-foot pre-connect was not an option on that fire. And that's what our 142 has. It has a single pre-connect, 200 feet. So in situations like the Jackson Street fire, it wouldn't have been the best thing to have first. So if we had staffing, if we had another station, if we had it in our budget to do 10, 10, and 10, if we had in our budget to increase POCs or something like that, I'd be strongly against this. But since we don't, and the budget is a zero balanced budget, when I ask for something, if we spend, it's no to something else. And if I have to say no to 142 to find the money to approve this, then that's why I'm proposing it. Two needs that the fire department has. The one I'll go into at a later meeting, but when Mayor interviewed me, he said it's in the capital budget this year to replace 102. He says, do we have to? And I knew he didn't want to hear this. But I said yes. He said, what are our options? Can we run 142? I explained what I just explained to you guys. And really our only option is to just run 150 frontline, and then the days that we have staffing, run 142. So then we have a very large ladder truck going to the grocery store, medical calls, training, something that I don't want to do. I feel like I have the same attitude as you guys. I pay taxes in town, and I want to do the right thing. That's why I explain those things to my men. So I'm always looking for ways, hey, if we can do this, not that, let's do that. Let's make this work. So what I'm asking tonight for you guys is I'm asking to replace a 2002 LaFrance fire engine that's 20 years old. To help finance that, I am proposing that we sell 142. Like I said, if the situation was different, I wouldn't even propose it. Now, one thing I want you guys, go ahead.
Just ask a quick question. Which one is 142?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not the.
Yep, I use my common terminology with that. So 142 is the 2020 Ford F550 XL that we had fitted at Alexis Fire with the ultra-high pressure pump. So it's what is commonly known to us all as the mini pumper.
So this is the one we just bought recently then?
This is the one we just bought. Yep, yep. So, knocked me off my train of thought, but that's okay. So, what I have in front of you is the memorandum about the mini pumper. So one thing about the engine needing to be replaced is that when we looked at replacing it, it was in the capital budget, yes. It was budgeted for under 500,000. Expected cost was about 500,000. So seeing how the costs have exploded on everything, side by sides, you can't get them, 6 months wait. I instructed Lieutenant Swanson, who is the head of the truck committee. I said, Lieutenant Swanson, we have an unreliable engine. We need to see what's out there, but we can't do what we did in the past, because in the past, like with 101, we built a custom spec pumper. We chose the frame that we wanted to build it off of. We chose the body. We chose cabinet sizes. We made it fit our equipment. We added things like a light tower to it. We have on all our engines a foam system. I said, Lieutenant Swanson, let's get a stock, readily available engine. We can't afford a custom pumper. I said, see what's out there, see what you can do. We formed the committee and included Alderman Snow, thank you, and Alderman Stevens. And I said, show me what's out there. So even after getting a stock engine, choosing a smaller engine, which fits the profile of our city and our small downtown station, because it was built in 1917, so when fire trucks were horses. They deleted the light tower. They deleted the foam system. And what I'm going to be presenting next is about the least expensive option to replace this engine. Those guys worked really hard. They considered a lot, and I'll go over that. But the reason why I'm getting to this is because it's $669,850, significantly more than what we budgeted for. So this can help. This can help offset that. One of the proposals I have for you later, and don't read ahead and just listen to me, because I'll cover it. I'll make it as clear as possible. One of the proposals I have for you tonight, so we have two options. So how do we deal with this big cost? So there's two options when you have to buy something real expensive. You can lengthen the term of financing, or you can increase your down payment. So I've presented both of those to you tonight. Both options will fit within our capital plan of $67,800 and change for the down payment. So the one option, and the reason why I'm asking to sell 142 or the mini pumper, is the proposed use of ARPA funds to supplement the down payment. If you guys use the ARPA funds to supplement the down payment, the exact amount's in there, it's under $250,000. If you supplement the ARPA payment with the ARPA payment and the capital payment, we can do a 6-year lease on that like we had planned, and then we can get those payments under the $67,000 that we had planned. Okay? If we use the ARPA funds, I would like to sell 142. So the ARPA funds, it's an approved expenditure. Shannon's worked extremely hard. I apologize. In my first month of office, I have significantly increased your workload, and I thank you for all your help. If we use those ARPA funds, then 142, when it sells, then that money would go back into the general fund for however you guys choose to be the best option to spend it. When I contacted the dealer of Pyro UHP, so they are a global. dealer, not just in the United States, but they in Europe, they use these ultra-high pressures all the time. They've been doing it a long time. And I contacted the CEO because they said they might be interested in purchasing ours. And I said, well, what do you think would be a figure that we could get? And he said, well, tell me about it. And I told him about it. And I said, we were hoping to get about $225 for it. And he said, yep, that's probably about the going rate because the supply of these is really down, and the time to make them with all the components is really pushed out for these two. In normal times, you couldn't buy a rig and sell it for pretty close to what you paid for it. So your next question that you're going to ask is, how much was the mini pumper? How much do we have into it? So the cost of the 550, the truck itself was $51,800. Alexis Fire, we paid them $180,000 to customize it. That's lights, sirens, ultra-high pressure pump. There was $3,400 in change orders, and then $1,000 to wrap it and put decals. We have $236,661 into it, and the proposal is the request to sell it. Having said that, I'll read my memo. Whereas the community is facing the challenge of significant inflation of all costs, increased labor costs, and infrastructure needs within the community, where the cost of the replacement pumper has increased by 50%, I am requesting an ordinance to sell the 2020 Ford F550 XL VIN ending in 8923. The sale of the vehicle will be advertised by the best appropriate means, including but not limited to contacting dealers and advertising on social media. After discussion with the CEO of Pyro UHP, the primary dealer of UHP fire suppression vehicles, the suggested sale price has been determined to be $225,000. So I am allowing you guys, if you feel so moved, to authorize the sale of the 2020 Ford F550 XL by any means authorized by state statute, including but now not limited to the sale through an internet auction site or trade-in for new vehicles.
Okay, motion by Alderwoman Prather, second by Alderman Snow. Discussion, Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I have a couple questions for you. So typically, how many years do we pay on a new engine?
So to my knowledge, the first one that we leased finance was our very last one, and it was a 7-year lease finance program for the 68 and change, 67,800 and change. So that was the first one. In the past, we've used impact fees and other money right from the capital fund to purchase. The last purchase before our 101 Alexis was our 2011 Alexis, the ladder truck. And that one we bought with insurance money because the previous ladder truck lit on fire when a hydraulic hose blew over the exhaust and it burned out. So that was an insurance check.
So we've never had to pay 10 years or more payments on an engine?
No, and Alderwoman Freeman, I wouldn't suggest that we do that as an option, because if you pay that, just like anything else, if you buy a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage on a home, the amount of interest that you pay is significantly greater. So if you look at, this is Shannon's packet.
Mm-hmm.
The best option that we've agreed upon for the city of Belvedere for this purchase would be through Byron Bank. So if you look at that one. So once you guys are all there with Byron Bank on the top title. So Alderman Frank, if you look at I'm looking at the packet that Shannon handed out. It was on our desks. Yep, so if you flip, there's 1, 2, the third page is Byron Bank at the top. And Just so you guys know, the financing information that's in your packet, that was provided by PNC through Pierce. Shannon took the extra steps to do some due diligence to check those rates, and she found some better rates from local banks. So the best rates were through Byron Bank. They also have no prepayment penalty, so that was an added plus. So if you look at the first chart of the box and you go down to total payments, you'll see that a 6-year lease with interest, the total payments come out to $702,339.10. Now, to contrast that to the other option, if you look at the total payments on that box, that's $776,614.60. So to not use cash that we have on hand available to keep that in our reserves or to spend ARPA money on other things, it would cost us, what's that, $74,300 to do that. So we haven't pushed that out in the past. I know you guys have always done a good job holding the line on the finances, and that's why we're in good shape. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Alderman Freeman.
Thank you.
Then
So
Alderman Fleury.
the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and, you know, I had a lot of respect for Chief Heiser, but whenever I asked him about the mini pumper, I never really could quite his answers. So the mini pumper was supposed to go out to accident scenes, 911 calls, not fires, is what my understanding was. It was going to save gas. It was going to save wear and tear on the streets. It probably would have been a little quicker to get to a 911 call, medical calls, right? Not fires. And, you know, I would never see the mini pumper responding to my neighbor who called for an ambulance. I would see the big fire truck come up from 6th Street. And I was like, why are we not bringing the mini pumper? That was the whole point in my mind. And Chief Heiser was always like, well, we need a 10-man band for that. And I'm like, what's the difference if you put 2 guys on that fire engine to come up to that 911 call, or you put 2 guys on that mini pumper to come to that same call? I could never quite get a comprehensive answer from him, because I was all for the mini pumper for that reason.
Right, I understand that, and understanding the options and how I could get that in service and how you could do that. So there's one way to get that in service is if we have, so today, 142 is in service. It's at Station 2, because we have, how many, Captain, do we have on today? We have, we got a full shift on today. Nobody's off. Nobody's off. So today, we have 5 down at Station 2, and at Station 2, they are on engine, and then 142. So today with the extreme heat this week, so one of the things that 102 doesn't have is air conditioning. So with the extreme heat warnings, the guys are going to be running on 150 this week, so they have air. But I know where you're going with that, and I want to answer you 100%. So the other option, the only other option to run that is to take an engine out of service and then staff the guys on that, or have the guys jump. So jump is a practice sometimes used. It's frowned upon by the guys especially, and it does have some drawbacks. So your drawbacks are is when you jump from one apparatus to the other, hopefully you don't forget anything. Hopefully your gloves didn't fall out or your fire mask. And so the other consideration is jumping takes time. So it takes time to take your stuff off that vehicle. One of the first things that the men do in the morning when they get in to duty is they set everything up. When I was a company officer on the ladder truck, I would get in there, I'd get my air pack situated just right so I could just get it on right away. I'd put my thermal imager. I'd actually clip it to my air pack. I was one of the few that did that, and I would situate my radios, and I'd have my hood set an exact way. So I'd just, because 3 a.m., you just put all this stuff on, and so I'd get all that set up. So to do a jump would mean everything that's set up, you have to undo and go to that. And the most important thing in our business, and the reason why we have decided as a city to have staffed full-time firefighters is response time. So because if your house is on fire, or if you're not breathing, or if you're having a seizure, or you're choking, if any of those things are happening, you don't want people flip-flopping vehicles. So they say they set all their fire stuff on the engine. But now medical call comes in and we say, okay, we're gonna take a minute and a half to move all our stuff over here because it's a medical call. We wanna reduce wear and tear on the road. So what we have done and what we're able to do and what we're currently able to do is that when we have 8 on duty, we take that 4-man company, which is Rockford runs with 4 people. It's the standard is 4. Like 80% of full-time fire departments run with 3 because of costs. But we take that and we split them in 2 and 2. And that's something that we've been able to manage as a department our size and been able to do that. And then that way we're able to not have to jump and we can have that staffed. So we either jump, increase or increase staffing. So those are the 2 options with how to get that in service.
Okay, so that explained it a lot better to me, I guess. Then you can't just be on the mini pumper and then a call comes in for a fire and you're on the mini pumper instead of the engine. So you'd have to go back and switch out.
It's
right?
all about time. Everything, like even the all call, everything that we always do is how do we shave seconds off our response? Why do I set my gear that way? Because I shave seconds off the response. So we're considering down in dispatch some automated dispatch so that the person can be on the call and dispatch at the same time right now. Right now they can't be on the call. You can't talk to 2 things at once. So another dispatcher has to do it, or they have to put the person on hold or wait. So we're always trying to save minutes. That's when I talked about deployment, it's 17 seconds for the mini versus 1 minute. We literally try and shave seconds off of everything. So yeah, we could. It would just take us longer, and we don't feel that that's in the best interest of the community. They're paying a premium for that minute, you know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Fleury.
Thank you.
Alderman Porter.
We had talked earlier, Chief, and I had a couple of questions and concerns, but my concern is with, I appreciate looking at outside the box of ways to finance our new fire engine, what we need, which was on the capital budget. My concern we talked earlier about was, so we paid $236 for this vehicle. We're going to sell it for $225, so we're already losing some money there. But eventually, we're going to need another vehicle. And as we saw with the engines, they went from, we were expecting 500,000 to, at the bare bones minimum, 669. A lot of them are 800,000. So if we sell this now and in 5 years have to buy another truck, we could have to spend a lot more money then. So although we can get our engine now, we're just kind of kicking this can down the road to when we now need another vehicle to replace 140. That I know we got 142, but 140 is still in service, but eventually that's going to run out, just like we have a fire truck that's 20 years old still operating and breaking down. So, what kind of limitation we're going to have if we sell this and then later on we have to buy another truck? Will we have to buy another truck, I guess, is my question.
So thank you for bringing that up, because the one thing that is a definite is that we have 140 as our previous ALS response vehicle. It's a 2003 Ford F-350 ambulance, and so that's 19 years old. So if this were to sell, we would need to outfit an ALS response vehicle, and that vehicle would not be able to have suppression. So the added benefit of this 142 is that you're able, while you're having an ALS response vehicle for accidents and everything else, that you can suppress fire with it. So that's something for you guys to think about. The other thing is, say that sells for 200, just round numbers, make it easy. So that sells for 200. And then we have 160, which is our Ford pickup truck. Do you guys remember that one? We have a pickup. It is 2017. Yep, it's 2017. We have a 2017 Ford pickup with about 6,500 miles on it. So if 142 were to sell, I would be coming to you guys for approximately $50,000 to put a cab on that and some slide outs and some trays and change the lighting to make that an ALS alternate response vehicle. So it would be $150,000 of savings, and what you would give up for that savings would be the ability to suppress with that vehicle. So on days like today when everybody's on duty, they would be able to respond in that alternate response vehicle. It would save $150,000 because it's a four-door crew cab pickup. And I am 100% okay with either way that you guys go on this. It's your decision, of course, but 50 of that, whatever the sale of this vehicle would be in some way, shape, or form asked to be spent on that later. So when you think of selling this vehicle, I mean, don't think of 200, think of 150 when you're considering which way to vote on this.
Alderman Porter, then Alderman Frank.
Okay, my one question, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems to me that I remember that one of the big selling points of the mini pumper was that it's four-wheel drive and it could go off-road and get into places to do fire suppression that was you couldn't get with a truck. Do you think that by selling it, we're compromising the safety of the public by not having that ability? I mean, are there places that we can't get with the hoses, with the big truck, that this would actually help by keeping it?
Alderman Porter, I wouldn't say that we compromise the safety by selling it, but I would tell you that 142 is a great vehicle, and you can drive it to the rear of a house that was on fire and put out fire right in the back, and you'd be minus a couple ruts in the yard, whereas a big engine, you can't do that. It definitely has its place and its advantages, and I wish we were larger so that we could do two engines and have that centrally located and have the two engines on the outskirts, because it does a really good job supporting that and then being there in the quick deployment. But we just can't run it with how we're staffed, and there's not a clear way to utilize that without either two options, taking one fire engine out of service and running it, or having a jump company. And those are two things. Like, one thing the guys know, I'm all about time. What's the time? Let's get our gear set. How long does it take you to put your gear on? How long does it take you to deploy? And that's stuff we just practice all the time. And so I really wouldn't be comfortable with either of those, but I wouldn't say that we're jeopardizing safety, because it's not in service most days.
Alderwoman Frank.
Thank you, Mayor. It's almost like we need to sell the mini pumper just to make that extra down payment of $313,000. I don't see another choice.
That was my idea. In talking with the mayor and Shannon, they expressed concerns with, spending our ARPA money that we've received, and the whole timing of this. And could we sell 142 and then have this conversation? And I said, please let me just give the options to you guys and let you guys decide that. But that's where that huge down payment, if you guys decide to go that way, that's the way I recommend. You would use that money, and then when 142 sells, that would be money back into the capital fund. And so that was one idea to try and help with this explosion of costs of a fire engine that was unanticipated and not budgeted for.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you again. So I think there are appropriate uses for the ARPA funds and inappropriate uses for the ARPA funds. And I think this is a 100% appropriate use for ARPA funds. I would not be in favor of selling our mini pumper other than the fact that it's not being used anyway?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you said you would be interested or would not?
I would not be interested in selling it other than the fact that it's not being used anyway.
Correct. It's limited use, and we could outfit 160 at a savings.
Any other questions? Alderman Fleury?
Yeah, I don't know if you have these numbers offhand, Shannon, but what is our current reserve and what do the auditors recommend our reserve be?
The recommendation is, I believe, 3 to 6 months, and I think we're sitting at about 4.5.
Thank you.
I will say that Chief and I had some discussion about this initially, and I wanted to, I was under the impression when I seen 142 after its purchase, it was out at Belmar. I think Alderman McGee and Alderman Fleury both were there. And so when I saw it, I was under the assumption that it was going to take the place. We were going to be able to respond with 142 and do it more quickly, efficiently, and it wouldn't have the wear and tear that we do on a big vehicle. It wouldn't have the wear and tear on our streets. And that was the assumption that I was under whenever I went and watched it on display. I also want the council to make sure that they understand that we have a number of unknowns yet during this budget cycle. And I just want to make you aware of it. We have some injuries, and we have 6 currently out, I think, with the police. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is that right? And so we do have, there is going to be overtime with that, that's going to come with that to fill those positions. We also have police and fire testing costs. We have for new hires. We also have our insurance costs, which are good through December 22nd, December of 2022, and those are subject to change. Not to mention we have fuel prices that I don't know where those are going to end. We have continued prices for all goods and services, and we have contract negotiations for 4 remaining unions that we're dealing with. We have $400,000 worth of ARPA funds currently available. I know we have some issues at our sewer plant and also with some of the water. We have to prioritize what we have. Also, remember 142 is a specialty truck. I'm a little bit dismayed to hear about a $200,000. We paid $236,600 for it, but as we all know, it's a relatively new vehicle, and the price of our engine went from $450,000 to nearly $700,000. So I would think that probably that mini pumper would be worth more than $200,000 just because of inflation and the fact that the truck, which it was my understanding was so hard to obtain. Probably the mini pumper, I would think, would be something as well with the supply shortage that we have. I don't know. And then we go back, and then I also want to ask, how many times has 102 been out of service and we've been able to respond? We did look at the maintenance for the current vehicle that we have, the 2019 through 2022. And in those 3 years, I believe it's up to currently, we've had maintenance issues, service issues to the tune of $27,390, and the truck still runs. The other thing that this is probably the most inopportune time to make a major purchase. We have the truck itself, which is inflated by $250,000. I'll catch you, Alderman Fleury, thank you. By $250,000, so we're going to pay a premium for it. And the question is, to me, whether or not 102, we would be able to continue to pay for service costs and make that truck run until things hopefully got better. I do believe they will get better. If it gets much worse, I don't know how forward we're going to stay, how we're going to stay in business anyhow. So I do believe that it will get better. So the question is now the best time with all these things to go out and purchase this vehicle? I'm just bringing these things up to make sure they're all considered because they haven't been brought up at all. Let me make sure that I got everything off this list, the questions that I had made. And if we have a fire, we do have a mutual aid. We do have MABUS, and we do have mutual aid. We have another engine over at Station 2.
That's true.
And so when we normally respond to fires, we respond normally with both engines, I think, correct?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we do have auto aid agreements, so I'd supplement to what you have there. So normal response, we have 2 engines and a truck from District 2. We got a RIT coming from Cherry Valley. We got a backup return, change of quarters from Marengo Fire, and then we have District 1, 2, and 3, all with engines, and then each with the chiefs. We have 4 chiefs for an actual fire. The standard that we fight fire, NFPA standards, they're basically like the prudent man of the fire service, and they say 15 firefighters within the first 4 minutes if you're making a interior attack into IDLH, and absolutely everything you said is 100% true.
And if, Chief, if we do have a response if we are able to respond, obviously, without 142. I think 142 was probably a specialty truck.
It is.
You know, it wasn't really an answer to an engine truck. I think at the time, the money would have been better spent, and I know you weren't here, but the money would have been better spent at $450,000 to $500,000 at that time to go ahead and invest in a vehicle that was an engine that would satisfy being able to use it all the time, being able to respond, being able to have the crew go out on it, the shifts go out on it. And instead, 142 obviously didn't fill that bill because, as you had pointed out, one of them is manning. If we don't have enough manpower, it stays put.
Yep.
So we don't use it.
Correct.
So, you know, my other thought was if we could Band-Aid 102, and if we could sell 142 and know exactly how much money we would have, would we have 200,000 or would we have 250? Would we have 240? I don't know. You know, we paid 236 for it and change, and if we received more money, then perhaps we could put that money down. And I was hoping that some of the issues that we have that I had pointed out were unknowns, the overtime with the illnesses, the insurance, the continued inflation. We also have declined to raise a tax levy here in this community, and I think it's 5 years and counting. And, you know, that would be something that I would think the council may want to take another look at. But those are all things that are questions that I had about the unknowns, and then perhaps are we going to be able to would we be able to make this truck work until we get a better opportunity to purchase it. So just questions that I had. It's up to the council to decide that. Alderman Fleury.
Thank you. So if we vote yes on this tonight, it would still come back when you actually get an offer for the truck. So, right now it's estimated 225, but if the highest price you get is, say, 100,000, at that point we can say, no, we're not going to sell this set. Or if we agree to selling this now, that whatever price we get, that's what we've signed up for.
So typically, I can structure it any way you want, but typically, obviously, nothing is decided tonight's committee. It'll come back in ordinance form, 2-week layover. But typically, the ordinance authorizes the sale, and whatever we get, we get. So for example, the common theme is when we sell used squad cars, we either know what we're going to get because they've checked ahead of time on a trade-in value, or in the past what they've actually done is put them up on eBay, and you get what you get. If you want to place some kind of reserve on there, where anything less than that had come back to city council, I can structure it that way. That gets cumbersome, especially when you're trying to sell through internet auction sites and things like that. But it is doable. But no, typically, the ordinance says you are authorized to sell the vehicle. And you get essentially what you get.
If we're able to structure it such that we set a reserve, and then, I don't plan on fire selling this thing like on an auction website. I don't think that's in our best interest.
And there's nothing that prevents the city, even without setting reserve, from saying, the chief or the mayor, no.
Right.
We're not selling this for $5.
Right. It would be fully advertised so we could get the most that we could get. And Mayor, if I could respond to just a couple of your questions, or if there was another question on that train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see if there was.
Yeah, I guess just for me, my concern is, like I've already said, we paid $236. If we only get, $150 or $200 for it, I don't think that's a good. Although we understand the restrictions, I don't think that makes good sense to sell something at a huge loss just to kind of move it forward to something else. But if we could keep it at that $225 or whatever agreed upon number is, I think that's closer to what we paid for, and it's still not something I would fully agree with, but it's a little, I guess, easier to put it together of why that would make sense.
And I agree, Alderman Fleury. I think we would want to get the most we could get for it, obviously. I would hope that it has inflated, much like everything else. It seems like it probably would. But I don't think, I think I looked at it as, it's wants and needs, and I think when we purchased 142, it probably wasn't a prudent purchase. It may have been a want, but I don't think that superseded the need of a new engine that the department was looking at. And I think we see that now. We're gonna pay an additional $250,000 now, where had we purchased the truck based upon need instead of based upon 142 as a want, in my opinion, we would have been way ahead of the game, but we're not. So at some point or other, we have to live within our means, and part of that is to get the most out of a vehicle that there's no guarantee we're going to be able to use, especially if you go forward, if the council goes forward with a new engine. Probably this would be a want, whether or not, I don't know how many times it's been out of the barn since we've had it.
56 in 2021 was the first full year that we had it. It had some repair work done to it, but we've had a couple long-term injuries, and we've had people in paramedic school, so we haven't been staffed enough. So for comparison, Station 1 responded to, in 2021, in that same time period, they responded to 1,850 calls. Station 2 responded to 1,401 calls, and of those 1,401, 56 calls were handled by 142. So I would agree with you that it is a specialty vehicle for us right now. I would say that it would be wise for us to have that alternate ALS response vehicle in some form on the days that we're staffed to do that and run that also while we're in training, which is what we do 2 hours of training every day in a 4-hour window. Whenever we're all together training, that's what goes. That's what goes. So we're very mindful of that, and the your objectives are my objectives as far as keeping these trucks, not depreciating them, not hurting the roads, being responsible with that. I would suggest to add a reserve price of $200. Yes, we paid $236 for it, but it's a 2020 Ford 550 XL. We used it for a year, not a ton, but we did use it for the training. There is wear on it. The only reason that I feel we'd be able to garner that close to that amount is because of the economic conditions. I think normally it's just like a car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, especially when it's custom specific built, it's much less. I would think if you guys wanted to, if you elected to use ARPA funds and you wanted to set the limit at 200 and see how it goes. However, what the mayor said is that there's a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of unknowns, cost explosions, but the one thing I am certain about is 102. I wanted to go over real quick why we can't keep it, why we can't limp it along, why we.
I was hoping you'd get there, Chief. Thank you.
Yes. So this is a quick summary, but I have to start with January of 20, as we started having starting issues. We started having, it's hard to start. So in January 20, there was a major overhaul of the engine. They repaired the radiator, they replaced the injectors, they replaced turbo gaskets, they replaced the pump control, and they rebuilt the pump valves. It was out of service for 10 days to get those repairs done, and it cost 8 plus 15, $9,500. So one thing that I do want to express is that the cost to maintain something that's unreliable is always going to be way less than buying new, but it's going to leave you stranded. At some point, sometime, it's going to leave you stranded, and 102 has done that on a couple times or already. So, and then in March 3rd of 20, it was out of service for 21 days. The cab airbags went bad. So that's all the notes we have on that. I don't know why else it was 20 days, but that was 20 days. But something that's important to know is that that didn't fix the starting issue. So in 2021, we've had multiple attempts to fix that. And as a matter of fact, I added up all the downtime, and engine 102 was out of service for 58 and a half days out of 365 days. It was out of service 16% of the time. It was only in service 84% of the time. It started in January of 21 for 13 days. It had a fuel tank strap that broke and a wheel seal leak and electrical issue. It was out of service for 13 days. And then in March of 17 and 21, it was out of service for 2 days because, well, when the fuel tank strap broke, they realized that the frame was so deteriorated that they couldn't rehang the fuel tank without rebuilding the frame. So they rebuilt the frame on March 17th of 21 for $2,000, and then they also fixed the EMS heater because the drugs that we carry, they have to be climate controlled. So obviously you can't have epinephrine and all the things that we carry that can't freeze in the winter. So we had to get that fixed. So we were still having the starting issue. So on May 23rd of 2021, so this is about a year ago, engine 102 was out of service for 40 days. It was out of service for a month and 10 days. In that time, they rebuilt and replaced the injectors, then they fixed the engine fan. So one thing about engine 102, the 2002 Sutphin, is that American LaFrance went out of business a while ago. Even before parts were hard to get for this. Lieutenant Swanson, do you know about when they went out of business?
2012.
Okay, so maybe 10 years ago? Okay. So in 2012, parts started being difficult to get for this this engine. But that took 40 days. In August 22nd of 21, there was a charging issue. The street department was able to fix that in half a day. In October of 21, the head gaskets were replaced on that. Then in 12 of 21, we were still struggling with the starting issue, and we started burning out starters. So since the starter couldn't be ordered, we had to actually have the starter rebuilt for it. So on 12/15 of 21, we had the starter rebuilt. The cab heater went out then in December. So on 2/24/2022, the guys went down thankfully, it was to take the truck to the store, and it wouldn't start. So those are the types of things. I mean, the engine's it's not like a dump trunk where you got a back one, it's an inconvenience. It's not an inconvenience if the stuff on this is, first of all, fire suppression. It's the lines that the guys are carrying into the building in the backup line. It's the stuff, I mean, they're bringing this stuff into buildings that are on fire that you can't see. They haven't been into it before, and it's high heat conditions. This is and those guys will do it, and they signed up for this, and it's their honor to do it. But they're counting on that thing working. It has stuff, if you're not breathing, if you're bleeding out, if you have a heart attack, all these medicines and devices, this is all the stuff on this. So it's not like a dump truck or your personal car where you call your friend and get a ride. It's not like that. So I know the right thing to do, but I'm trying to convey to you guys with evidence what I believe, and I'll provide this, and then you guys decide on your own. So that was the February where it didn't start. So like I said, in December of 21, that starter was rebuilt, and then in March of 22, so now we're just two months ago, that starter was rebuilt again. And then on May 10th, the street department fixed the air leak. And then on May 31st, the pump plugs were replaced. So I've been talking to Derek and Caleb on this, because you're trying to get technical terms or objectives, but does the engine need replacement? Yes. Why? Well, they use non-technical terms for this, but Derek has been on vacation. He's still on vacation today. And I thought he was on, so I stopped by this morning. I called him, and I said, "Hey, Derek, where you at?" And he said, "Oh, I'm still on vacation." I said, "Hey, I'm talking to council about 102, and I know your feelings on it." And I said, I talked to Caleb already, and I have a good idea what he's going to say. And he says, "You know what? I'll come in." I said, "No, this is your vacation. That's how I feel about it when guys are off. It's their own time." And he says, "I'm going to come in." He came in, and I'll pass this around. This is not for drama or dramatic, but this is the pump plugs that he replaced. And he said, "You can give this to them as an example." He said, "The entire inside of the pump in the fire engine looks like this. The other plugs were corroded." And he said, "I've seen it that bad one other time, and I think he said a street or a sewer or a pump, and he said it had about 8 months of life on the pump." And I said, "Well, okay." So I said, "Well, engine and transmission." He said, "Well, if it has," my notes are, it has 16,000 hours on it. It has 16,000 hours on that. So he said, if you equate that to road miles, he says you're looking at a car with about 800,000 miles on it. He said, the engine and transmission, a major overhaul is on the horizon, and that's about 20 grand, and it's about 3 weeks of downtime. And I said, well, what else? He says, the frame's deteriorating, and then, talked about how the back of the engine, the frame had to be rebuilt just to hold the weight of the gas tank. And I said, okay, so engine, frame, and then the pump. And then you guys are seeing the evidence. So the other small things that have been out, because we really have been limping this along. It was actually going to be traded in when we got our Lexus in 2017, and they were going to give us $8,000 on a trade-in. Chief Heiser said, between our 1992 Sutphen and this really, I know parts are hard to get, but can we keep it? And they said, okay. And they they gave us the $8,000 trade-in value and let us keep the engine. That's true story, 2017. They said, go for it. And so, but even before then, like the generator went out on that thing. And so, you know, Chief Heisers was like I am, that if something was very, very expensive, we would justify it, and we were planning on replacing this, so we never fixed that generator going out. It has no air conditioning, and I know for us it's a minor inconvenience. For guys in a day like this week, it's a safety hazard. If they're in their turnout gear and they go into, and I appreciate, because the station is like nice and cool at Station 1, you guys, I appreciate. And the guys have been thanking me, and they're glad that it's working great. But, you know, when they're in their turnout gear, so car wreck or automatic fire alarm, carbon monoxide, no, they don't go on that, carbon monoxide. But if they're in their fire gear, then it really is very uncomfortable to not get that relief from having AC. But we didn't, you know, the AC has been patched and done everything at the street department. They said it just needs a 100% complete overhaul for the air conditioner to be fixed. And then we have our, the one thing that nobody can solve is our ladder issue. Our ladder's on a ladder rack, it's intermittent, it has sensors, all the doors need to be down for the ladder rack to work. Most of the time it works, but sometimes it doesn't. They've replaced the sensors, they've checked all the electrical connections, it's one of those bugs. So the last thing I have to say about 102, as we're wrapping both of these decisions in our mind together, is that the street department uses a software called iWork, IWORQ, and that's where they do their work order systems, and it has a fleet management software package. And it comes out with a fleet replacement rating number. So this rating's based on age, use, and condition, and what I think, and it compiles data from other municipalities, and it rates your vehicle on replacement. I think the average for in-service vehicle. Now I said, well, what's the range? He says, well, a brand new vehicle, 0. I was like, okay. I'm like, well, what's the worst you've seen? And he says, maybe like 70. Maybe 70 is the worst he'd ever seen on, because they have old equipment that's even in the street department it's there if they need it, but it's, you know, not really used. Right now, at 25, and Derek and I discussed this, but we feel like this is a low number. But at 25, they recommend replacement. And the reason I say I feel like that's a low number, because our ladder truck's at 33. So that is a low number, but he said that currently frontline vehicles, that the LaFrance is the highest of any of these, and it's being an emergency response vehicle, it's worse off than any other frontline, something that's used for heavy use within the city. It's sitting at 50.4. So that is my case for replacing 102. Thank you for allowing me to answer that question.
I appreciate you answering it.
Yep.
So we do have a motion and a second on the floor then. Alderman Porter?
Just one really quick question. This $245,465 in the ARPA funds, is that the last of the funds that we have available, or is there still more funds?
We have, Shannon, go ahead.
We've got 400,000 right now that's available.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion then. The motion, as stated, is to authorize the sale of the 2020 Ford F-550XL. Alderwoman Freeman. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just had a quick question for Brent. So of the ARPA money that we have left, how much of that do you actually not want, need?
Boy, that's a loaded question.
He needs it all.
There are infrastructure needs out there that ARPA won't even get to, so I guess I can just leave it at that.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Every penny counts, I guess, is another way to look at it. So any other questions for Chief Shadle? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second then on the floor to authorize the sale of the 2020 Ford F-550XL by any means authorized by state statute, including but not limited to sale through an internet auction site or trade-in for new vehicles. I think we did have it take into account the discussion, we're not gonna give this thing away. I would agree with that, so anything that doesn't fall, close to, I would say, in the 200 to 225, or maybe even more. Maybe we'll get more than that. I definitely wouldn't entertain getting rid of it because, it probably doesn't help us as much. He's got, I think you said 50 to 75,000 to outfit the F-350. Is that right, Chief?
Yeah, a higher number would be 50.
50, okay, 50. 50,000 then to outfit that if we do get rid of 142. And so definitely if you want to put a cap on it, if the motioner wants to, and the second, that's fine, but we'd come back to the council anyhow before we made a sale. So I would. Yeah. So, Alderwoman Freeman?
So just to be clear, the sale of this would replace ARPA money that you're looking to get, or are you gonna, the sale of this plus some ARPA money, or how is that working exactly?
So, I mean, when we get to the engine proposal, I got to talk a little about procurement and timing and availability. So, no, what this is doing is helping the city with money. This money would go into the general fund and it would be used as you allocate. So it's not tied to ARPA funds. It's not one or the other. But if you decide to go that route, it wouldn't go back into ARPA funds. Correct me if I know I'm not wrong, but you might be able to explain it better than me.
Ms. Hanson?
Actually, the ARPA funds are in the general fund.
Right, but it won't be tagged as ARPA with the...
Basically, we'd be using some of the ARPA funds now, but when 142 sells, we would kind of be replacing those funds.
So, Mr. Anderson?
Well, I can add a little bit, not necessarily with the ARPA question with Marcia, but a little farther along in our agenda tonight, we've got purchase a leaf machine in the street department. And that bid came in at about almost $40,000 under what we have budgeted. So if council wanted to desire to think that will pay for the majority of the outfitting of the four-door pickup truck, as an example.
So Brent, that's awful nice of you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes, sir, Brent, thank you.
And is that a mini leaf?
It's
or is that the real deal?
That's the real deal.
Okay. Just make that clear. I don't want to get in that again. Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Freeman, did you have anything else? No. Alderman Snow?
Correct me if I'm wrong, so if we use the ARPA funds to fund the upcoming motion potentially, and we get the money from the sale of the mini pumper, then the $200,000+ becomes unencumbered, because ARPA money is encumbered in that regard. So in light of that, we can actually use it for other stuff that would otherwise be unencumbered.
Well, and actually, because we've claimed revenue loss for how we're going to use our ARPA funds, we can basically use them for any operational expenses.
Okay, they're unencumbered at this point.
AKA infrastructure improvements.
Yeah.
A mini.
Right. So we're all in agreement about that, I guess. But yeah, essentially, if they come, you'll just be taking money and then replacing it back, and it's still unencumbered. We'd still be able to use it on a need basis. So is there any other questions regarding the motion on the floor? Alderman Porter?
So do you think we should put that in there about the minimum sale price of the mini pumper then in the motion? Or do you think that's necessary?
You're gonna
I mean,
administer it, so.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to give that vehicle away. You know, I mean, I would say 200 to, you know, I don't know. We may be able to get more than what we paid for it. I have no idea. You never know. I mean, it is an inflated market, and, you know, I was a little bit, I know Chief he didn't provide any concrete numbers, but he did, they were discussionary, I guess, and, you know, 225 seemed to be reasonable, but, you know, things are selling based upon short supply, and so we could perhaps do better, maybe. But definitely, we're not going to give it away. So, and if we have an offer, you know, that's in that area, then I'll pick up the phone and call each alderman. So, how's that? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion on the floor. We need a roll call on this, or just?
We don't need one, but I would.
All those, yeah, maybe we'll take a roll call on this. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? When the clerk calls a roll.
Flurry?
Nay.
Yay or nay?
Nay.
Nay. Frank? Aye. Freeman?
Aye.
McGee?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Prather?
Aye.
Snow?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
7 in favor.
Okay, motion passed. And Chief, do you have anything further? I know you
I do.
There's a follow-up.
I do.
There's a follow-up here,
We,
right?
the meat of this conversation we've addressed, so, and I'm not going to repeat everything. I'm going to make it as clear and simple as possible. If you've ever been to a closing on a home loan, it has a lot of documentation, and the closer will guide you through it and help you exactly, crystal clear, know what it is. So, in your packet, on page 5, is the recommendation from the truck committee. So basically, to summarize this, the truck committee did an amazing amount of work in 1 month. I discussed the requirements that I asked Lieutenant Swanson to hold it to, and he did not disappoint. So we sought proposals. We considered 4 new engines that were available, and then 1 used engine. Other used engines beyond 2015 were unavailable. So the engine market is like the home market in Florida, where as soon as you go to buy something, it's not there anymore. As a matter of fact, the engine that was picked out for tonight that I was working on, the sales rep called me on Monday morning, and he said that it sold. So Pierce, unbeknownst to our knowledge, had 2 other similar situated engines with this base package Sabre engine that the truck committee had elected to purchase, or is proposing that we purchase. Base model, it doesn't have the independent suspension. Like I said, it doesn't have the light tower, doesn't have the foam system. That's $30,000 of savings. We really sharpened our pencils or they did. They sharpened their pencils as much as they could. And right now, Pierce, we had that one sell, and I said, Dan, what is the true pipeline like? What's the true pipeline? He said we have 3 of these, and 6 departments have them in engineering, and 1 got bought that morning, so there's 2 of them. And right now, of the 2 engines that we're looking at, there are 5 departments have those in engineering. So 5 municipalities or cities or fire districts are attempting to buy these, and whoever gets the paperwork done first is going to get it. I said, well, what about, all of a sudden these other 2, like you guys weren't aware of that. I said, what about, where did these come from? What's beyond that? He said, that's all I can see in the system. And I said, okay. If you guys want more reading information, if you look to the next pages, it is a supplement to the truck committee's letter. And that's on pages 6 through 8. And that goes into the different proposals, a little more about the engines, what they have, what they don't have, and what their cost. So pages 9 through 26, this is where the lawyerese, this is the purchase agreement and truck specs. So this is the stuff that the truck committee pours over, something that, I don't, they love these engines and know exactly what everything on them means, and God bless them for it. And that's why I asked them to be on the truck committee and say, what do we need? And here's the constraints. And so 9 through 26 is the purchase agreement and truck specs. Pages 27 to 29 are the proposal letter. And then you'll see a diagram of the truck with the schematics. It's a short engine. It is 30 feet. It's 30 feet. And how tall is it, Jason? It's 9'4". So it's the lower, some of the more important things for engines is a low supply hose bed. Supply hose is the heaviest hose we carry. It's a 5-inch large diameter hose line. It's loaded on the top of fire engines, and it causes fall hazard or shoulder or back injury hazards by reaching over your head and pulling this out. So this is the new engine that we chose, has a low design to be able to easily access that. So you'll see the drawings of that. And then 30 to 33 is the initial financing proposal. That was the one through PNC, through Pierce. And like I said, Shannon in the supplement was able to provide better options for you guys.
So I think we're looking at just a proposal then to, for a purchase, and I know Ms. Hanson had come up with better percentage of financing options on her part. But the cost of the vehicle then, Chief?
Yes, sir.
660.
So of the proposals that we saw, I'm going to go to the recommendation from the truck committee because that's a summary of the supplement. You'll see that the Pierce Sabre engine is the one recommended by the truck committee at $669,850. They also considered a Pierce Enforcer engine, which is the first step up with independent suspension and some other benefits, and that was $750,000. They also got proposals back from Rosenbauer. They looked at a Commander engine, which is $661,000. It is $8,000 less, but from my understanding, this rig was, so these are all stock trucks. They put them in a line. They put them in between the custom trucks to keep the line moving. They're all stock. I know it says custom, but this is stock. The difference between Pierce and Rosenbauer is that the Rosenbauer, it is what it is. So it's here it is, take it or leave it. Whereas we're able to, with Pierce, we're able to sharpen the pencil a little bit, get some of the things that we don't need off of it. The other major consideration for going with Pierce, not only are they known for their customer service, but when we need service, we start at the street department. They do triage. It's kind of like going to the emergency room, and if they need inpatient care, they go to Rockford. So Rockford Fire actually has mechanics, and they have a garage, and they bill us, just like a mechanic shop. Rockford's all of Rockford's engines that they've been purchasing lately are all Pierce. So this is stuff they have the equipment for. They know these trucks. Pierce is the largest truck supplier, fire truck supplier, so their parts are easy to get. They are, the service, Lieutenant was telling me that the service is a lot easier. There's all their service work with our Alexis, what we'd have to do for stuff like that, we'd have to, how far away is Alexis? 3 hours. We'd have to drive our ladder or our engine, or someone would come down 3 hours and drive that thing and pick it up and take it there. Pierce doesn't operate that way. They have a huge work truck, and most of the work they do, they drive that truck to you and to take care of issues like that. So keeping it on, the uptime is going to be easy to maintain when little things break with this Pierce. And so that is the reasoning that the truck committee has decided that that would be our best option over the slightly lower cost option. They also considered a Rosenbauer SAM Commander engine. So engines, you can get them with all the technology you want. And this SAM Commander engine is an engine where you can operate the controls from a tablet. So obviously that's not what we're looking at. And in the used market, we did find a used Ferrari igniter engine, and it was commanding a price of $695. And to my knowledge, it hasn't sold yet, and I think it's a little overpriced. But the truck committee said that they really weren't able to find anything, because I said, if we can get a good used truck, let's do that. What's readily available, because we have this issue now. We have an engine that's 16% of the time. It's not in service, but more so is that it can let us down, and we just don't know when that's going to be. Like I said, the 2015s were not able to be found, and the ones that were found were still commanding, what'd you say, 450,000. So, before I read the motion, what we're looking at is really, we have two options. The payment's a lot more. So we can either keep the financing about the same and save on interest by putting a good down payment, or we can push the financing out over a longer period of time, keeping the payments lower, but in the end, having a higher interest rate. So if you choose one, it would require, like we talked, go ahead. Oh, Mayor, Alderwoman Freeman.
Alderman Freeman.
Before we get to that whole financing thing, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on this second page here, where it lists all the ones you guys looked at, that paragraph that says, in addition to the above mentioned vehicle prices, there is extra equipment that would need to be purchased.
Yes.
And then it lists them out, which add up to about $43,398. So that's like $713,248 total. Is that 43 included in our, or are you gonna come at us with that down the road?
I should have had a bullet point of every note, because that's a very important note. And we talked at length about it. So my 19 of that is the extrication equipment that's currently in our capital plan for this year. So 19 of it, then so I got another 21, let's say. Again, when estimating, that's the highest cost possible with that. So with 2%, we have a shared money budgeted with 2%. And I've talked to the guys, I've talked to the 2% board, and they understand the crunch we're in. And they said that they'd be, and again, it would have to get voted on, but I have $9,000 in my budget for items split with 2% that could account for up to $18,000. And then anything additional would be able to fit in to, because we're replacing, like our engine replacement line item. So anything that is not mentioned, I do appreciate you bringing it up, because it's on the committee report and in the supplement, but those are just extra costs. So some of those costs, like the Pierce can install the deck gun. It would cost more, but we can just buy it third party and get the exact one we want, and for less money. And so, I think $6,500 of that's for that. If we get this vehicle, we got to put decals on it. Estimated that's about $1,000. The biggest expense in that was the extrication equipment. It was the 19, and then the other part of that was, I believe we will be able to salvage our radios out of 102, but if we're not able to, that includes radios for that. And so my thought is that if you guys approve that I'd be able to take care of that with the capital fund for the extrication, and then the shared 2% fund. And then if there was any other smaller incidentals, I'd easily be able to fit that into my apparatus, engine or equipment replacement budget. So it's nothing that we're talking about tonight. It's not included in this, and I do thank you for reminding me of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alderwoman Freeman. City Attorney.
The mayor just whispered in my ear a question about, should we vote on purchasing the trucks separately from the financing? If you look at the chief's memo, there's actually two recommended motions on there, and they're in the alternative, one or the other, not both. They both include a conjunction of purchasing the truck in conjunction with one form of financing. Those two motions, I drafted. At the time I drafted them, I did not know that the finance director was out seeking alternative financing. That's why hers are not included in there. Because frankly, we had so many people running different directions on this project, I think we didn't always know what the other people were doing. So the easy answer is this. The way I explained it to Chief Shale was, it makes no sense to come in and say, let me go buy a $670,000 truck without talking about the financing and how we're going to afford to pay for this truck and which way they want to go. So we did the motions in the conjunction, purchase the truck and approve a form of financing. If you want, and you can do it this way because we're at committee, you could vote on whether or not you want to buy the truck first and vote on the possible financing secondly. I just didn't want this getting to council where we've got a motion to buy a truck with no motion on financing, and all of a sudden we're taking $670,000 out of our reserves, because that made no sense. So it is up to the council how they want to proceed. I do know that if you want to do it in the conjunction, which is a fine way to do it, and I don't know how much you've talked about it so far. I was listening to Chief talk about the Byron Bank option. I think the recommendation from finance was going to be, she identifies as a 6-year lease payment from Byron Bank. It's actually probably a loan. I'm not sure they're going to actually own the vehicle. It'll probably be titled in us with them having a security interest. But the 6-year loan from Byron Bank at the interest rate of 3.5%, I would notice, pardon me?
That was the best rate.
Yeah, it was the best rate. And I would note that because I think there is a several-month delay from the time we get the truck and the time we actually have to pay for it, that Byron Bank is willing to lock in that rate and essentially place the money in escrow until we pay for the truck. So if you want to vote on the truck separately and then vote on the finance, you can. If the general consensus is that we're going to approve a loan from Byron Bank for 6 years at the interest rate 3.5% as outlined on page, I think it's 3 of the finance director's packet. The proper motion would be a motion to enter into a purchase agreement for one Pierce Saber truck with the stock number 37961 for $669,850 paid for as set forth in the Byron Bank proposal for a 6-year loan payment at 3.5% interest.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second on the floor. Any other discussion?
And now that we have the motion and second, I will point out that this will absolutely come back in ordinance form. And quite frankly, when it comes back in ordinance form, I may be separating them because we may have to make the loan people happy as they write the package.
Ms. Hanson?
The motion did not specifically state the use of ARPA funds, so if we could please include that, because we will need that for documentation.
So moved.
This motion, move in the second, agree.
Second. Okay. Any other discussion regarding that? How are
Do we need to clarify further that 67,850, I'll give you the exact numbers, from the capital which we had budgeted?
No, you do not.
Or you just want to do all?
No.
Okay.
And when the ordinance comes through, Ms. Hanson will give me the extra number to put in from ARPA, and we'll handle it that way in the ordinance.
Alderman Snow?
Question for you and you guys for timing-wise. Do we potentially need to waive the 2-week layover?
In order to secure the...
In order to expedite getting this slot?
I'll
'Cause
be...
that's another 2 weeks that you can't make the commitment if we don't waive it.
There's certainly the council can waive it. I will say I'll be shocked if we have the documentation ready by Monday night. I haven't even seen the loan package yet from the bank.
But we can still move forward, waive it, and having all that legal schmoosh so that we can move it forward.
I would never ask this council to approve an ordinance entering into a loan that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, you would be able to save this order on this truck, I take it, as long as...
The only way to, so Dan the salesman is used to this, he works with municipalities all the time. He said if I had a letter with if it was unanimous, everybody felt strongly this way, a letter on letterhead said the council approved to purchase this and they felt strongly and it was unanimous that would potentially be strong enough with final approval coming on X date, that would be strong enough to hold that, but I know we're still not signing a,
He doesn't have a signed documented contract. right?
that's right, so it'd
I
be up
would
to
say
them at
this,
the
if
time.
if you're really looking at waiving the 2-week layover, we'll do that as a second motion following this one, to put that on the council agenda. We can do that. If the paperwork's not ready, it's just not ready, we don't do it.
Right.
And frankly, you could approve the purchase of the truck, even though you haven't approved the financing yet, next Monday night, just with the understanding if the loan falls through for some reason, you're on the hook for $670,000.
You know, Chief, I would, I would think that if we had a letter to him with the minutes, or at least the vote on sending this to the council as a whole, and whatever that vote may be, and also a vote then to secure financing, I would expect, what do you think? That'd be,
Yeah, if you give me a strong indication, whatever you guys indicate tonight is what I would put to him in writing on the letterhead. And I do, one thing I wanted to mention, as Shannon was saying with the financing, that the Byron Bank has locked in these rates and guaranteed them for a certain time period, which is extremely important because later this week, the Fed's meeting, and the economists agree that they're going to be raising the federal funds rate between 0.5% and 1% this week. So this purchase is sensitive to that, and so that was great to hear about Byron Bank to do that. If you guys, I think, Mayor, may I suggest the easiest path forward is to approve the, well, it would go against what Attorney Drell is recommending, so we got a motion in a second on the.
let me, Ms. Hanson, I see you had your hand on the
I
mic.
actually just wanted to make a comment that as far as the Byron Bank information, other than a letter I know they need from us, it was a true loan commitment. This was the only one that was an actual loan commitment. So, and we can certainly reach out to them tomorrow to see how quickly they could get us documentation.
Okay. Okay,
Can we do a roll call that way?
Yeah.
Documented.
absolutely. We'll do a roll call vote, and that'll be part clarity of the minutes. So the clerk will call the roll on the motion.
Frank?
Please clarify what we're voting on.
It's a motion to purchase a Spear Saver truck number 37961 for $669,850 paid
Right.
for.
But
through a
just the-
6-year loan identified as the Byron Bank 6-year loan payment plan at 3.5% escrow is identified on page 3 of the finance director's packet.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Freeman?
Aye.
McGee?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Prather? Oh, Prather is left. Snow?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Flurry?
Aye.
7 in favor.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Alderman Stevens and Alderman Snow, for your time on the committee to try and help sort this through. Appreciate it.
Mayor and Attorney Drella and Shannon, thank you all for your help. I know you three and the truck committee did a lot, so I just wanted to thank you guys and thank you, council, for approving this purchase.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, all those from the department on the truck committee as well. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving along, rapidly, too. Item number 2, building, planning, zoning, unfinished business. We have none. Item 3, building, planning, zoning, new business. Building department update. Kip's absent, so Gina, did you have anything?
Just the building department has about 5 commercial/industrial reviews going on right now. Project Kelly did submit for building permit, so those plans are taking up about half the office. They were quite large. And there are 2 houses that are under review as well.
Okay. Thank you, Gina. And you're up also for Planning Zoning Department.
So I have 4 cases for public hearing tomorrow. That would be the Dunkin' Donuts going to where Grandma's Restaurant was, Bars Flowers being turned into a small event center, text amendment just clarifying some issues in our code so that they are compatible with federal regulations, and the mural going up on the Apollo. They are fixing that one. And then in July, I already have an application for a rezoning and have been receiving several phone calls, so we'll see if that changes. Just standard site plan review, zoning letters, I'll skip through those. Heritage Days is obviously coming up, so quite busy with that. If any aldermen want to ride on the float, please let me know so I can make sure we have everything needed. If any aldermen want to buy a t-shirt ahead of time, they're all in my basement right now, so just let me know and I'll bring them, hence the purple fingernails. But just working on getting Facebook and sponsorship requirements updated, and working on some last minute activities like bounce houses and stuff. The downtown facade grant application deadline is this Friday. So I went from having just 2 applications to, I believe I have 5, and have received probably about a dozen phone calls in the last week. So we will see what I ultimately end up with to present to you guys. I promise not to make it as bad as last year. And the land bank property, the land bank did obtain 1 property in Belvedere, and they are working on obtaining the second property as well. So we could possibly have 2 new houses in that program this year. And that is the quick summary.
And if I could, I might comment on the land bank on the Nettie Street property that we were at. Alderwoman Frank had been so gracious to come to that, to the land bank, to the property that Mr. Reyes had purchased, and I think you had summarized it quite well, that was probably one of the most complained about properties that you've had, and I know that property had sat vacant for 10, 11 years, and nothing was done with it. And normally, when you don't have anything that's done with properties like that, then the city's on the hook for a demo bill. And besides that, the aldermen hear about it, and the neighbors have to live with it. So I appreciate you coming to that. And so we already had 1 successful property, and I know the neighbors, the gentleman who rehabbed that property had mentioned that the neighbors had come out and they had stated that they were shocked that anything was being done, and they were happy. And they were also making improvements on their own property. So it is a little bit contagious when people realize that, you know, somebody actually is able to do something about property that's, you know, an eyesore in the neighborhood. So thank you, Alderman Frank. I appreciate that.
Can I add something real quick to that?
Yeah.
So the land bank originally acquired 3 properties, 1 being Nettie, and I believe last I checked on the real estate listing that had a sales pending. Then there is Garfield and Allen, and both of those have had building permits issued within the last month. So they should be getting worked on, getting started relatively soon. So hopefully, you know, by the end of this building season, we'll have 2 more. And then the one that the land bank already acquired this year, it has not had water to it since the 90s. So it has been vacant for a very long time. And then Union isn't quite as bad. It's only been without water for about 7 months. But, so yeah, hopefully it is good things for those neighborhoods.
All right. Is that it, Gina? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work on Heritage Days, too. Public Works unfinished business, none. Public Works new business. Public Works update. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. On your desk tonight, there's some stormwater proposed utility information there. The final versions that are going to go out to the public, general public. We're working now with the Boone County Shopper on a mass mailing for the Belvedere residents. Whether it's going to be an individual document or an insert to the shopper, yet to be determined. We're still working on that layout. All of this information is available on the city's website now. There's links, as you can see in that cover letter, to the city's website for those surveys. So we'll get that survey information back. We'll tabulate that information, and we will plan on having a open house on the stormwater utility on Thursday, July 7th in the city council chambers here from 5 to 7 p.m. For residents to answer any other questions or get details, specific details, and maybe on their individual conditions, situations, and then we will gather all that information and come back to committee on July 25th with the results of that summary, and then present that to council for your decision on if you'd like to further consideration on implementing the stormwater utility. Otherwise, our Florence Court project has basically been completed. There's a couple of punch list items left that contractor has to finish up, but the majority of that work is done. It looks very nice. They did an excellent job. I think the residents there are happy. I received 0 phone calls during that project, so that's always a good sign. Our Logan Avenue is looking more and more like a war zone, so that's good news too, because that means it's progressing. Most of the utility work has been finished, and the contractor can now get into the meat and potatoes portion of that project. So that's moving along as well, and that's all I have for an update.
Okay. Thank you, Brent. And item B. I'm sorry, Alderman Porter?
I'll keep it brief here. Can I ask you a quick question? I had a conversation with a constituent here that's over on 10th Street, and there's a pretty good flooding issue over there. It comes off the parking lot of the pacemaker area. I'm wondering, Brent, I didn't see anything addressed on that in the stormwater study. Are we doing something about that, or is there something we can do about that?
We'll have to take a look at the situation and see what it is. I'll talk to you later, give me a call and fill me in on the details, and then we can look into that.
Okay, thank you. Item B, sewer jet cleaning nozzle replacement. Brent?
In your packets, there's a memo for the replacement of our existing sewer jet nozzle that needs to be replaced. We got proposals for that replacement. Standard equipment company is $4,550.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Stevens. Any questions regarding that motion? Alderman Snow?
I realize it's coming out of a line item, but was it actually budgeted for that specifically?
Well, not specifically, but it's in there for that purpose.
Okay, any other questions before we vote on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. And item C, leaf machine replacement and all that savings. Thank you, Brent.
Memo in your packet. Current street department budget, we've included $100,000 in the capital line item for the purchase of a new leaf machine. This new leaf machine will replace a home-built machine that was put together by the street department during the summer of 1999 when the leaf ban went into effect. The 2 bids received were from Arnow Equipment for a Dinkmar curb runner, $66,140. Benell Industries, a Titan Pro of $83,994. We currently have a Dinkmar curb runner leaf machine, and we have been sold on its ease of operation and the overall performance. If you recall, this came up for council about 2 years ago, and there was questions about the viability of the Dinkmar company. They have since had a management overhaul, and things seems to be back in order. And the price, the current price that we got is only about $4,000 more than the price that we had 2 years ago. So that's, considering our economic times, that's good. Our expected delivery is 90 to 120 days, so hopefully that'll be here before the fall season. I would recommend approval a little bit from Arnow Incorporated for a Dinkmar curb runner leaf machine in the amount of $66,140. This equipment will be paid for from the Street Department Capital Fund, line item number 415-752-8200.
Motion.
Seconded.
Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Stevens. Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So this one is replacing a home-built leaf machine, but we currently have a Dinkmar curb runner. So we operate two when we do the leaf pickups.
I think actually we have three. We run two all the time, and then we have one for backup or a third unit when we have the staffing and the capability to get out there for doing leaves. We can actually pick up with more.
Alderman Snow?
On a humorous note, is the Titan Pro smaller?
No, actually, it's the same size. They're all comparable, and in fact, the Dinkmar that we have is basically identical to this one.
So he's saying it's not a mini?
It's not a mini, and unfortunately, the cost increase we can attribute primarily to, we got to go to Tier 4 engine standards. There's tiers, no more Tier 2 or Tier 3, the ones left in stock anywhere. We have to go to Tier 4, which means more money.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Snow. Any other comments? Any questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. That's all we have on our agenda. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Stevens. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.